The purpose of this video is to be used as a background element. If you are at work, studying, wanting to sleep, or simply just need to relax, this video should suit your needs. I have gathered a lot of information about Berserk over the past few weeks, and I have compiled them into one large video. Before I start, I want to give a big shout out to the Berserk wiki. I wouldn't have been able to do this video without them. There would be no way. Thank you guys a lot. Let's now begin. The Berserk universe can be understood as a vast trinity consisting of three essential domains of existence: the physical world, the astral world, and the ideal world. In the aftermath of the Great Wave from the astral world, the universe has reverted to a primordial condition in which the physical and astral realms are predominantly intertwined, forming a singular domain referred to as Fantasia. The physical world, often referred as the mortal realm, the realm of humanity, or simply Earth, constitutes as a fundamental domain within the universe, alongside the astral world and the ideal world. This is the realm where humanity has predominantly existed throughout history. In ancient times, the physical world and the astral world were largely intertwined. However, they eventually became almost entirely independent of one another at an unspecified moment in time. Since this separation, there has existed only a tenuous connection between the two realms, manifesting as the interstice. The incarnation ceremony conducted by Griffith initiates the merging of the astral and physical worlds. Following the Great Wave from the astral world, the layers of these realms further overlap, resulting in the creation of the global interstice of Fantasia, where the astral beings inhabit the physical world as living entities of myth. The astral world, also known as the afterlife or netherworld, constitutes a fundamental realm within the universe, alongside the physical world and the ideal world. It serves as a plane where ethereal beings dwell, often termed the world of spirits. More specifically, this realm is inhabited by a multitude of legendary creatures in its upper layers, while deeper strata are characterized by significant natural forces. In the past, humans possessed an ability to perceive and engage with astral entities, even constructing shrines in honor of specific spirits. However, with the extensive spread of doctrines of the Holy See, individuals began to adhere to the rigid world, leading to a decline in belief in the ethereal realm, and consequently impairing their capacity to perceive the spirits of the astral world. When talking about the structure of this world, it is composed of multiple layers, starting with a shallow stratum inhabited by legendary creatures and extending downwards into the profound depths of primordial forces. Its immense expanse encompasses numerous regions, each possessing a distinctive atmospheric quality. The shallow layer. The interstice is a shallow layer within the astral world, where the realm intertwines with the physical world, facilitating the manifestation of various astral creatures within the realm of humanity. Due to this intimate connection with the material plane, it exhibits a landscape reminiscent of a corporeal existence, primarily shaped by ethereal forms of the physical world. This realm is inhabited by entities such as trolls, ogres, elves, and spirits of the deceased. These beings were once denizens of the human mental realm, encompassing dreams and fantasies. Clippith. Clippith is a region of darkness in the astral world that is home to spiritual creatures with a particular odic, also known as spiritual magnetism, affinity for darkness. Such residents of this region include trolls and ogres. Divine Domain. As the astral world descends, the terrain transforms significantly, presenting a stark contrast to that of the interstice, which is beyond imagination in comparison. With this lower realm, they inhabit ethereal entities that are not only profound, but are also so distinct from the majority of beings that they can be regarded as divine. Among these entities are angels, demons, and the deities of various polytheistic traditions. The Abyss. This is the deepest layer of the astral world. It has a vortex of souls and is described by Puck as an endless swirl of consciousness that feels as if all evil in the world were gathered there. It is home to the idea of evil, which described it as the dark side of the collective consciousness of the human species, filled with all kinds of blurred negative feelings. The spirits of the dead create an interconnected chain originating from it. This chain typically manifests whenever an apostle meets their demise, emerging from the fatal wound to envelop the body before retracting alongside the apostle's soul. While the body is restored to its original human form, the Band of the Hawk first encounters these chains following Wild's death. Subsequently, Guts becomes increasingly acquainted with the Abyss during his confrontation with the Count, as the chains attempt to claim him on 2 occasions due to his brand of sacrifice. Individuals who make sacrifices to the Godhand, along with those entangled with demon kind, often including the victims of these very apostles, are brought to this place upon their death. As explained by the Godhand, when their physical bodies cease to exist, their spirits are whisked away by a tide of demon kind, directly to hell. Ultimately, they are unable to retain their final vestiges of individuality and dissolve into the swirling abyss to wander for all eternity. The idea of evil. It is a primal entity residing in the abyss. It is responsible for dictating the fate of humanity through its application of causality, acting on the species' collective consciousness will. The idea was born out of the collective human desire for transcendental reasons behind certain facets of their existence. When meeting Griffith, it speaks about its conception. Humans desired reasons. Reasons for pain. Reasons for sadness. Reasons for life. Reasons for death. Reasons why their lives were filled with suffering. Reasons why their deaths were absurd. They wanted reasons for the destiny that kept transcending their knowledge. Somehow, this birthed an eldritch entity, one that, since its conception, has acted as the weaver of humanity's fate, and thus the orchestrator of momentous events in the physical world, through the principle of causality. Causality refers to the principle of cause and effect that operates within the universe. By itself, causality is merely an abstraction and is separate from the concepts of destiny or fate, which pertain to the compelling force behind predetermined events and the unavoidable occurrences that arise from such a force. Furthermore, it bears no relation to karma, a notion that Flora refers to when contemplating the destinations individuals reach after death. According to Flora, causality is a spiral, not a circle. While some events may appear to recur, they do not happen exactly as before. She also believes that fate is bestowed by God, but humans ultimately have the choice to accept or reject it. The idea of evil employs causality to determine the fate of humanity. Although the Godhand is cognizant of the flow of causality and possesses significant foresight regarding most potential outcomes, they are not omniscient and are unable to predict every eventuality. The Godhand. The Godhand is a quintet of sovereign demons who serve as executors of the will of the idea of evil, their desires being inherently linked to this entity. They dominate the apostles as their masters and are tasked with overseeing the demonic reincarnation of bearers of the Behelit during sacrificial ceremonies. Furthermore, they have orchestrated numerous significant events that have profoundly influenced the trajectory of humanity and the condition of the universe. Each member of the Godhand was once human and previously possessed the Crimson Behelit, which marked them as individuals fated to be reincarnated as the demon sovereigns they now embody. Every 216 years, they each assume their true forms during the event referred to as the eclipse. The key members as of this video are Slan, Ubik, Void, Conrad, and Femto. Slan is the only female in the Godhand. Similar to her counterparts within the Godhand, the details of Slan's previous existence as a human remain shrouded in mystery. Nevertheless, Slan has exerted a significant influence on humanity through the cult dedicated to the goddess of the flame, which have engaged in cannibalistic pagan rituals in her honour, all the while being unaware of her true identity and her status as a member of the Godhand. She has communicated a revelation to the cult's prophet, detailing how the Hawk would repel the barbarians and guide the people towards becoming one nation. Furthermore, she characterizes Femto's violation of Casca as a manifestation of beauty. Even when impaled in the abdomen and destabilized by the Dragon Slayer while in one of her incarnated forms, she experiences a heightened sense of arousal. Slan harbors a profound fascination with Guts, who stands in stark contrast to Femto's assertion that Guts is beneath the attention of the Godhand. She has openly acknowledged that she has closely observed Guts throughout his struggles following the eclipse, expressing a desire to engage with him in a personal confrontation within Clippeth. She finds Guts' resilience and strength compelling, while her rage and suffering excite her. Notably, she wishes for Guts to be reborn as a demon through sacrifice, and has made direct attempts to incite him into achieving this transformation. Ubik. The main responsibility of this member involves influencing the emotions of those selected by the Behelit to willingly offer a sacrifice. He has the form of a small floating figure wearing glasses that appear to be fused to its face. He has fin-like tendrils that hang down below him and is always seen floating, never seen stationary or against any surface. He is the smallest of the Godhand. His face constantly bears the same grinning expression, with his hands usually clasped together. Ubik is primarily responsible for the dialogue when the Godhand is in attendance, offering a considerable amount of exposition. His function seems to be to persuade the potential apostle to agree to the sacrificial bargain proposed by the Godhand, enticing them with the notion that progress is unattainable without relinquishing something of significance. While Ubik does not explicitly lie, he skillfully manipulates and distorts the truth to nudge his victims towards a reluctant acceptance of the agreement. Conrad. Out of all the members, Conrad is the one we have the least information about. He is far less developed than the other members of the Godhand. Conrad is the least talkative member of the Godhand, usually watching events unfold. He constructs a mound that elevates Griffith high above the other members of the Band of the Hawk during the eclipse, subsequently transforming it into the form of a hand. As a member of the Godhand, Conrad possesses the ability to perceive the flow of causality, albeit to a degree that is only marginally close to omniscience. This capacity allows him to anticipate nearly any potential outcome and to manipulate the course of events in order to ensure that a particular possibility materializes. Nevertheless, he does not possess true omniscience and is unable to foresee every eventuality. He has demonstrated the capability to utilize rats to materialize in the physical world. Alongside the other senior members of the Godhand, he also manifests basic forms from the blood mounds in St. Albion during Griffith's resurrection in the corporeal realm. Void. In a distant time, Void emerged at a temporal junction alongside 4 otherworldly entities, markedly different from his present kin. He and these 4 beings were observed by an unknown individual dressed in Berserker armor, likely Skull Knight. Void exhibits a profoundly philosophical nature, surpassing that of his demonic counterparts. His mode of expression is notably more formal and archaic compared to the other members of the Godhand, reflecting both his considerable age and wisdom. Much of his discourse revolves around the intricacies of causality. In terms of temperament, he remains remarkably subdued, displaying no visible emotion, even when faced with unexpected occurrences that catch both him and his kin off guard. Furthermore, he stands out as the most courteous member of the Godhand, referring to the Band of the Hawk as esteemed guests, rather than merely viewing them as sacrifices. Void possesses the ability to defend himself by manipulating space, which includes the creation of 2 interconnected portals that can redirect the Skull Knight's assault back towards him. Void is the sole member of the Godhand depicted as executing the Invocation of Doom, a process that entails marking the souls of the victims with the brand of sacrifice, thereby condemning them to be relentlessly hunted by various malevolent entities until their demise. This capability serves as a method of branding the sacrificial offerings on the individuals in dire circumstances, who willingly relinquish much to the Godhand in return for the realization of a significant desire. Behelits are formed in the abyss as, quote, droplets of ideas that have spilled from that sea to eternity. The destiny associated with a Behelit rests in the hands of its master who sent it. A Behelit is owned by a specific individual and, irrespective of the circumstances, will inevitably return to its owner when their desire is sufficiently strong. The physical distance between the individual and the Behelit is inconsequential, as illustrated by Vargas. The Behelit that belonged to the Count reached him after he acquired it from a caravan of merchants, who discovered it in the antiques market in an eastern town. A Behelit takes on the shape of an egg, its surface adorned with human facial features that are unsettling in their arrangement. Although it often appears inanimate, there are occasions when one of its eyes may unexpectedly open and fixate on an observer. Moreover, if a Behelit is improperly handled, it may display significant signs of discomfort. When activated, a Behelit alters its facial features to form a distressed look that weeps tears of blood and emits a low scream before generating an in-dimensional space. Additionally, Behelits will tremble and rearrange their features in response to a sudden surge of overwhelming evil power. Behelits do not become nullified following activation. An owner's intense yearning for life can reactivate a Behelit, thereby summoning the Godhand once more and allowing the owner to make another sacrifice in return for new life. There is also a special kind of Behelit called the Crimson Behelit, or its other name, Egg of the King. It is said that the Crimson Behelit grants its own dominion over the world in exchange for their flesh and blood, and it is only bestowed upon individuals possessing the necessary qualities to join the Godhand. Every 216 years during the eclipse, a holder of the Crimson Behelit is afforded the opportunity to meet with the Godhand, in accordance with the predetermined nature of causality. the owner is required to make a significant sacrifice in return for being reborn as a member of the Godhand. It remains unclear whether multiple distinct Crimson Behelits exist, or if the same Behelit has been passed down to each member of the Godhand in succession. The eclipse is a rare sacrificial ceremony, occurring once every 216 years, during which a new member of the Godhand is to be born. Only individuals who possess the Crimson Behelit have the ability to initiate the eclipse. Apostles eagerly anticipate this event, making their way to the predetermined location of the promised time well in advance, ominously awaiting the occurrence in its fated environment. When the owner of the Crimson Behelit reaches a state of profound despair, they activate it, creating an interdimensional space where the eclipse unfolds. The bearer is then faced with the choice of sacrificing what is most dear to them in exchange for kinship with the Godhand, becoming a demon. The demonic figures guiding the event compel the invoker to acknowledge their preordained choice. With the declaration of "I sacrifice," the transformation of the invoker into a member of the Godhand begins, and their sacrificial offerings are marked with the brand of sacrifice. In the case of Griffith, as he partakes in the consumption of his sacrifice comrades, he experiences his rebirth as a demon. He is inundated with sensations stemming from the slaughter of his sacrifices, a confrontation that momentarily freezes his heart before he assumes his new, rightful form. Once his rebirth is complete, the eclipse approaches its conclusion, culminating only after the final actions carried out by the newly transformed member of the Godhand. Apostles. Apostles are inhumans, who typically acquire and activate a Behelit during moments of profound anguish. They summon the Godhand and join the ranks of demonkind in exchange for a significant sacrifice. This sacrifice is always something that defines their humanity. Relinquishing it is akin to abandoning a part of one's very soul. Apostles are bound by a singular, absolute law established by the Godhand, "Do as thou wilt," which grants them the freedom to exercise their will in the manner they utilize their ascended status. However, this decree does not shield them from one another, permitting apostles loyal to the Godhand to eliminate those who obstruct their objectives. While apostles enjoy the liberty to act as they desire, the majority respond to the summons of the Godhand when necessary, and possess a maddening instinct that compels them in the presence of a member of the Godhand. Each apostle possesses a unique released form, referred to as a proper form by Ubik. Their appearances vary significantly, encompassing distorted versions of animals and grotesque entities, many of which retain traces of their human characteristics. In contrast, the attributes of an apostle's released form are frequently mirrored in their normal form, with examples ranging from the overt, such as Wild's ape-like appearance, to the more human-like features exhibited by Locus, Grunbeld, and Irvine. The appearances of each apostle often serve as a manifestation of their ego and desires. For instance, Rosine's physical likeness to an elf reflects her fascination with them. Additionally, it appears that the candidates possess a degree of agency in determining the form they will assume. The Count sought to escape suffering, while Griffith, upon encountering the idea of evil, expressed a desire for wings. When an apostle meets their demise, their spirit is drawn into the abyss, while their physical body returns to its original, natural state, retaining all injuries sustained, which correspond to the damaged areas of their former apostolic form. Transformed by the forces of causality and an extraordinary obsession, the majority of apostles are characterized by their absence of empathy, an unquenchable thirst for violence. However, there exist notably disciplined apostles who possess the ability to restrain their violent impulses. After the incarnation ceremony, a multitude of apostles converge upon Griffith, vowing their loyalty to him. In this act, they ultimately secure their position within the realm of humanity, battling alongside mankind as the metaphorical beaks and talons of the White Hawk. Most apostles initially present in a humanoid form, but have the capability to transform into their released forms at any moment. Even in their standard forms, they exhibit strength and reflexes that surpass those of ordinary humans. Wild, who has no combat training, effortlessly maims opponents such as Barbo, and matches the skill of a trained swordsman like Guts, all thanks to his formidable strength. In their released forms, the majority of apostles possess immense power, showcasing abilities and strength that significantly exceed those of most humans. Certain apostles possess the ability to create entities referred as pseudo-apostles, typically by transforming humans, although the methods and outcomes of these transformations can differ significantly. Skull Knight. Having lived for approximately 1,000 years, he possesses extensive knowledge of global events and phenomena, along with exceptional foresight concerning the progression of causality. He is characterized by his aloofness and enigma, possessing a profound understanding of the intricacies of causality and a foresight of events that are yet to unfold. Consequently, he harbors a starkly realistic perspective on life, frequently alluding it to the inescapable nature of the flaw of causality. The past of the Skull Knight remains enigmatic, shrouded in layers of secrecy. He has a distinct animosity towards the Godhand. Numerous individuals have referred to him as King and Your Majesty. He has also acknowledged himself as the former bearer of the Berserker armor, which featured an adaptive helm that bore a skull shape prior to Guts assuming its use. Moreover, as noted by Schierke, the previous wearer of the Berserker armor fought until every last drop of their blood was expended. At some juncture, his current armor was forged by the dwarf blacksmith Hanar. Additionally, he possesses a history with several ancient figures, including Zodd the Immortal and Flora, the latter of whom he holds in high regard. The Skull Knight's swordsmanship is masterful, allowing him to easily dispatch apostles in their released form with a single stroke of his thorned sword. Despite the sword being of normal size, he has demonstrated the ability to completely shred the monstrous large forms of the released apostles, even those whose bodies appear to be too large for the sword to chop apart. King Gaiseric. 1,000 years before the birth of Guts, there was a legendary conqueror by the name of Gaiseric, who through sheer force brought order to the war-torn lands of the ancient world and created the first continental empire in human history. In the territories that would later form the Kingdom of Midland, various city-states and tribes were engaged in relentless conflict, a time referred to as the Age of Warlords. The arrival of Gaiseric, whose background remains largely a mystery, signalled the unification of these feuding factions and the creation of a semblance of order, with an army that appeared to materialise from thin air. Gaiseric successfully subdued the numerous factions under a single banner, thereby establishing the world's first empire. According to legend, Gaiseric, known as the Skull King, due to the distinctive skull helmet he donned in battle, compelled labourers from across his empire to construct a grand capital city referred to as Midland, which symbolised a land at the heart of nations. The Skull King led a life of opulence while imposing increasingly burdensome taxes upon his subjects, transforming the capital into a centre of extravagant feasting and indulgence. As recounted by the Holy See Inquisitor Mosgus, a sage who was imprisoned by Gaiseric in the Tower of Conviction persistently confessed the sins of the Skull King amidst relentless torture until an angel was ultimately dispatched. In a similar vein, the fairy tale of Skull King recounts that 4 or 5 angels descended upon the imperial city at the command of an irate god, which led to natural disasters that obliterated the city in a single night. Ultimately, the remnants of Gaiseric's capital city sank deep into the earth, concealed beneath the Tower of Rebirth in an effort to obscure the shameful origins of Midland. The tales of Gaiseric's legendary conquest endure through the fairy tale of the Skull King, as well as through various accounts from the Holy See. Approximately 1,000 years after the rise and subsequent fall of Gaiseric's empire, the capital city of Falconia is established. The Archmage Gedfring discloses that it is in fact the resurrected version of Gaiseric's once mighty imperial city. The Holy See. Approximately 136 years later, the second member of the Godhand was born, and 700 years before the birth of Guts, the Holy See was established. It is a highly influential institution, with its pontifical authority governing a significant monotheistic faith. The reach of the Holy See's influence extends broadly across various global domains. Its emblem features a hawk in flight, encircled by 2 orbs that spiral around it. The foundation of this church is to nurture faith. The Holy See also regard the Hawk of Light, identified as Griffith, as their saviour. Although the Holy See rejects the existence of other astral beings, it acknowledges the 4 kings of the world as essential guardian angels. The Holy See venerates a solemn and awe-inspiring deity capable of performing miracles. However, this deity does not reveal miracles casually. Rather, it resides in faith, within the hearts of believers, and in heaven. This divine being holds silence in high regard. As a sacred father, the deity is generous towards its followers, bestowing upon them divine protection. Furthermore, this being is not only kind-hearted, but also a stringent judge. Tolerance is God's teaching. Faith constitutes the fundamental teachings of the Church. Individuals are expected to act solely for God, without any reservations. In times of great adversity, faith is put to the test, as it is during the experience of death that believers truly perceive the essence of faith and are encouraged not to succumb to fear. Prayer is faith in and of itself. Prayer and devotion of all to God is the essence of the faith. Members of the Holy See use mantras. Those suffering from ailments pray to regain their health. It is also customary for the church to show charity to pilgrims. The Holy See oversees burial sites and utilizes various structures, including chapels and monasteries. Its governance is organized into several departments, such as the Department for Miracle Recognition, the Supreme Court, and the Financial Administration, which is overseen by the Vandimion Bank. Additionally, the Holy See possess inquisitorial authority to prosecute and adjudicate individuals on charges such as heresy. If found guilty during such proceedings, these individuals may face execution by burning at the stake. Nevertheless, it is not always the case that the accused are presented before a court. As an inquisitor, Moscus holds the power to issue summary judgment at his own discretion, without the necessity of a trial. Should a village be deemed a sanctuary for heretics, its entire population may be subject to execution by fire. Those who conspire to murder a priest are typically considered deserving of severe punishment, such as burning or execution by breaking on the wheel. The territories under the dominion of the Holy See encompass the King of Midland, situated centrally, as well as the Tudor Empire, the Kingdom of Balden, and the Duchies of Morgar and Wallaturia to the east. Additionally, the Randall Commonwealth and the Paneria Alliance, which includes Lana, Faris, Nice, and Britannis, are also part of this domain. According to Roderick, while Lilith may fall within its religious sphere, it adheres to a different sect. The Holy See therefore hold immense power in the world of Berserk, and it is highly similar to the Catholic Church in our world. Kushan. Kushan is a large empire located to the far east of the Holy See nations. The religion they have comprises various ranks, including a high priest and monks referred to as Brahmins, with Serpico harboring suspicion that they may possess magical abilities. Following an oracle delivered to the Kushan high priest, the Bakiraka clan was dispatched on a reconnaissance mission to locate the Hawk and the so-called Land of Oracle. The oracle foretold that something significant would transpire in that pagan land. Additionally, a woman from Shet overheard a rumor regarding the Kushan's practice of sacrificing women to their deity. Its military comprises extensive, well-organized conventional forces alongside an array of supernatural beings and human practitioners of magic. It has been involved in prolonged conflict with the allied nations under the auspices of the Holy See, having invaded and occupied a significant portion of Midland. The most formidable human forces of the Kushan Empire are characterized by their extensive cavalry and numerous war elephants. Their military divisions comprise several hundred horsemen each. They employ Bakiraki units and scout contingents that operate in large formations, while their supply lines are heavily fortified with archers. One Kushan commander has credited their success in prolonged military engagements, including the ongoing conflict with Midland, to the Empire's strategy of employing war slaves and capturing soldiers from rival armies, who are coerced into serving as cannon fodder to absorb the majority of the casualties. Additionally, the Kushan have engineered various war machines, including cannons, siege towers, ships, and a mobile palace, which is protected by imperial guards. In addition to deploying substantial numbers of human soldiers, the Kushan also employ various magical beasts known as the Bishaka Gana. These creatures are managed by spellcasters who are enveloped in a fog that resembles the appearance of Ganishka. These spellcasters, known as Harishada, are commanded by Deba and collaborate with the regular military force. The Bishaka are complemented by Daka, which are the result of human fetuses being infused with malevolent energy from the astral world through the use of the man-made Behelit. These Daka are transported by warships. The Kushan army was driven by an overwhelming sense of fear. It employed extreme cruelty during its conquest of Midland, systematically slaughtering entire cities and displaying their remains on statues, buildings, and within palaces. Women were captured, either to be sold into slavery or to be used in the creation of Daka. In the story, the empire is first seen ruled by Emperor Ganishka. It is not a monolithic empire, rather it comprises a royal house over lesser ones. This led to grudges between them. One such house is the Bakiraka clan. Traditionally, the heads of the various clans making up the empire decided for the country in a meeting known as the Kurultai. After Ganishka's defeat, a new emperor is appointed, and the Kurultai is held anew. The Bakiraka were a clan of war slaves who had served the overthrown Kushan royal family. Centuries ago, they were forcibly expelled from their ancestral lands. Upon arriving in Midland, they experienced a loss of dignity as they began working as mercenary assassins, utilising their remarkable combat abilities, aligning themselves with those they perceive as powerful. They were employed not only by the royal family of Midland, but also by various territories under the Holy See. Furthermore, they collaborated with Emperor Ganishka during his campaign to capture the Hawk of Oracle, hoping that such an achievement would facilitate the restoration of their clan. Griffith believed that the conflict between Midland and Kushan represented a unique opportunity for the clan to secure a position with the Imperial Army and ultimately return to their homeland. The Bakiraka are referred to in Midland as a murderers guild and an assassination order. They are identified as a mercenary group that specialise in assassination, with Judah learning that each member is a formidable and superhuman entity. In reality, all members encountered thus far are extensively trained in a broad range of killing techniques. They adeptly utilise stealth to their advantage, and the first Bakiraka observed seemed to possess the ability to see in the dark. The Tapasa, characterised by their impressive musculature, are endowed with remarkable strength and speed, capable of crushing iron armour with their bare hands or effortlessly hurling stone pillars. Furthermore, they are surprisingly swift for their size, a fact acknowledged by Rakshas. As a warrior clan, they uphold the belief that those who fear death will never ascend to the ranks of the great. However, they do exhibit a concern for self-preservation. This was notably demonstrated by Chasun Silat during their reconnaissance mission to locate the Land of Oracle. Although he is not adverse to eliminating witnesses, he conveyed that there is no necessity for the Tapasa to sacrifice themselves when confronting gods, regardless of their formidable strength. They also possess a certain moral framework. They regard Rakshas, who was once a member of the Bakiraka clan, as a taboo figure due to his transformation into a demon, characterized by a hedonistic approach to killing. According to Silat, they have caught fleeting glimpses of an inescapable current and have contemplated whether it's appropriate to submit themselves to something so enigmatic. Vritannis and the Vandimion family. The port city of Vritannis has transformed into a military stronghold for the Holy See and its allied forces. As a result, it has also become a bastion for various influential nobles from the continent, serving as the residence of the esteemed Vandimion family. The Vandimion family, commonly referred to as House Vandimion, is a lineage of esteemed nobles. It is said that their wealth exceeds the financial resources of a prominent nation. This family is interconnected with various royal families across multiple kingdoms and possesses significant influence within the religious community. Additionally, they are the founders of the Vandimion Bank, with Giorgio serving as its core manager, and also as the chief financial officer of the Holy See's accounting office. Another illustration of their power can be observed during the Holy See's military engagements against the Kushan. Numerous nations would find it challenging to conduct warfare without the financial support provided by the Vandimion family, including Tudor. Furthermore, the financial management of the Holy See is exclusively overseen by the Vandimion Bank. During the crisis in Albion, the Vandimion family was instrumental in supplying the majority of the provisions for the refugees. Their grand mansion is located in the Holy See. Despite having numerous servants attending to their every need, many of them fled during Farnese's childhood because of the girl's temperament. The mansion boasts an extensive garden where the young Farnese would often roam, entirely by herself. One of the outbuildings of the mansion was consumed in a fire ignited by Farnese, who was just 16 at the time, following her father's arrangements of a marriage for her. The Vandimion family is also depicted in a mansion located in Vritannis. This mansion prominently showcases a four-leaf clover motif. It is staffed by several servants, including those who assist Farnese following her bath, those responsible for overseeing dinner, and those who serve as coaches. Tudor. The Tudor Empire is an empire that boasts one of the most formidable military forces on the continent. At a certain point, Tudor captures Doldry from Midland and utilises the fortress as a strategic base for invading and conquering the nation, thereby instigating the 100-Year War. Throughout the conflict, Tudor endeavours to assert control over the northern island of Grant, maintaining a settlement known as Fort Chester. Among various wartime atrocities, local children were subjected to indoctrination, with a significant number succumbing to the harsh training regimen. The empire also exports martial equipment to the surrounding lands. This is the case of a lord who bought for his son a nigh impregnable set full mail made in Tudor. Tudor's military forces are distinctly identifiable by their arms and armour. The professional soldiers, notably the knights, along with their steeds, don heavy armour and primarily wield pikes and halberds as their weapons. Additionally, each order of knight possesses its own distinctive style of armour, For instance, the helmets of the amphibious raid Wild Beast Knights feature walrus-like tusks, while the Black Ram Iron Lance Knights are embellished with ram horns. The Blue Whale Knights are adorned with fish scales, and the mounts of the Purple Rhino Knights display horns on their chevron. Despite the varied designs of their helmets, all riders from this order wear a unique horn at the front of their headgear. In 648 BG, the third member of the Godhand was born, followed by the fourth one in 432 BG. 132 years later, Zodd had relinquished his humanity, becoming an apostle and longtime rival to Skull Knight. For approximately 3 centuries, Zodd earns the title of Nosferatu, a monstrous immortal battlefield god, disappearing for long-spanning periods of time just to resurface again and continue his slaughter. He is a dauntless apostle who has dedicated his life to the art of combat. His insatiable desire to confront formidable adversaries has resulted in countless fatalities in his path. He is both ferocious and unrelenting, displaying no mercy even when his foes are evidently outclassed. Most importantly, he yearns for a worthy challenge, the ultimate strong one. Despite his fervent desire for combat and seemingly singular focus, Zodd is a complex and enigmatic character. Unlike the majority of apostles, he does not consume human flesh, nor is he inherently sadistic or cruel. He derives no satisfaction from torturing or killing the weak. In fact, Zodd has articulated a profound sense of melancholy regarding his own formidable strength, as he finds it difficult to encounter worthy adversaries among humanity. For those who manage to survive their encounters with him, and thus demonstrate their worth as opponents, Zodd holds nothing but respect. He greatly esteems anyone capable of inflicting harm or even defending themselves against him, such as Guts and the Skull Knight. He possesses the remarkable ability to effortlessly defeat the average apostle, and stands as the only apostle known to have survived direct confrontations with the Skull Knight, having engaged in battle with him on several occasions. In his apostle form, he is capable of parrying large weapons using his horns and claws, absorbing volleys of arrows with his dense fur and skin, and breaking through solid concrete and rock with sheer brute force. His strength is so immense that he can send a fully armoured Guts, wielding his Dragon Slayer, flying across the battlefield with a mere swipe of his paw. Additionally, he has the capacity to tear fully armoured men and horses apart with a single strike. He also possesses remarkable durability, allowing him to withstand multiple lightning strikes from Ganishka, an assault that proves fatal to many of his fellow apostles. Yet Zodd manages to largely dismiss its effects. Furthermore, he demonstrates an extraordinary tolerance for pain. When his arm is severed, he responds with nothing more than amusement. In instances of injury or severe damage, Zodd has the ability to regenerate and heal his wounds almost instantaneously. During a fierce battle with Guts and Griffith, when his arm is severed, Zodd simply retrieves it and reattaches it to the bloody stump, with the wound fusing and healing within mere moments. Additionally, he sustains a deep slash across his abdomen during his encounter with Guts on the Hill of Swords, yet this injury disappears within seconds. However, it is important to note that this regeneration is contingent upon Zodd's ability to physically reattach the severed part of his body. For example, he cannot regenerate his horn once it has been metaphysically severed. 100-Year War. 80 years before the birth of Guts, Tudor conquers the fortress of Daldry, igniting the 100-Year War with Midland. Numerous esteemed commanders and generals from Midland made valiant attempts to reclaim the fortress, yet all endeavours proved unsuccessful. Even the renowned White Tiger Knights of Midland were unable to accomplish this formidable task. However, the course of the war underwent a dramatic change with the involvement of the Band of the Hawk, who entered the conflict as mercenaries operating under Midland's command. Upon receiving news that Tudor is on the brink of civil war concerning the succession to the throne, the generals of Midland commenced deliberations on the potential to exploit the situation to retake Daldry. Fully aware that Tudor lacked the capacity to confront both them and the impending power vacuum, Griffith proposes that his Band of the Hawk be entrusted with the task of personally reclaiming Daldry, asserting that he and his mercenaries possess all that is necessary to accomplish this feat. With unwavering confidence in Griffith's integrity and his impressive record of military victories, the King of Midland formally issues an order for the young commander and his band to proceed with the recapture of Daldry. In the crucial confrontation at Daldry, Griffith and his band of mercenaries skillfully outmaneuver and overcome General Boscan and his Purple Rhino Knights, thereby reclaiming the long-lost fortress of Midland. The triumph of the Band of the Hawk culminates in the resolution of the 100-Year War and paves the way for the signing of an armistice treaty between Midland and Tudor. By the time of 30 years before the birth of Guts, magic had been reduced to mere superstition. Gordo had been commissioned to forge a sword fit to slay a dragon, also known as the Dragon Slayer. At risk of being killed, Gordo fled the castle to the mountains, where he set up a forge near a mine rich with elven minerals. Sometime not long after that, Griffith, Guts and Casca would all be born. Keep in mind that we do not have an accurate timeline on when exactly they were born, but Griffith was likely the one born first. Griffith. A common-born child, Griffith faced extreme poverty, often struggling to secure even a mere slice of bread. Amidst the cobblestone streets and narrow alleyways, he played alongside other children, scavenging for discarded trinkets, which he cherished as small victories. Yet Griffith harboured ambitions that surpassed those of his peers. During the afternoons, as the sunlight was obscured by tavern brothels and pubs, he would gaze longingly at a castle illuminated by the sun. It was in these very streets that Griffith resolved to pursue that thing. Ultimately, he came into possession of his crimson Behelit, gifted to him by an elderly fortune teller who prophesied his future conquest of the world. Sometime during his adolescence, he established the Band of the Hawk, which included the miner Pippin, the former bandit Caucus, and the tumbler Judah. While he was still gathering funds for his fledgling group, Griffith encountered a distressed 12-year-old Casca, who was struggling to liberate herself from the advances of a lecherous nobleman. He intervened in their altercation and severed their salient's ear, expressing his discontent with the nobleman's sense of elitist entitlement. Instead of killing the attacker, he offered Casca his sword and urged her to use it if she had something worth protecting. Following the demise of the nobleman, which occurred when he fell upon the sword held by Casca, Griffith informed her that she was free to make her own choices, leading her to promptly join his ranks. The Band of the Hawk experienced a significant turning point when they were engaged by the affluent Tudor feudal lord, Genon. Recognizing that the morally corrupt nobleman was infatuated with him and presented a quicker, more secure means of financing an army, Griffith made the decision to offer his body to Genon in return for a considerable sum of money, thereby providing his band members with a greater opportunity for survival. This would be a good time to delve into the personality of this ambitious individual. Griffith conducts himself in a manner that is both refined and exemplary, reminiscent of nobility. His behaviour and sharp intellect often astonish those who are aware of his humble beginnings. His unique self-assurance makes his presence unmistakable. Individuals who meet him tend to view him with either goodwill or hostility, with the former often evolving into trust or fellowship, while the latter can lead to feelings of awe and dread. Those who choose to follow Griffith frequently find themselves overwhelmed with emotions during their initial encounter, either captivated by the allure of grandeur and magnificence associated with him or inspired by his unwavering ambition and conviction. Conversely, he possesses the ability to detect subtle animosity from others and reacts accordingly, showing no hesitation in employing force if necessary. His deep understanding of human motivations and unrestrained ambition has allowed Griffith to rise to even greater heights. Even in his youth, Griffith's ambition was unmistakable. In the narrow alleys of his childhood city, he first envisioned the acquisition of his own kingdom. Throughout the formative years of the Band of the Hawk, he exhibited a complex personality, at times presenting himself as carefree and youthful, while at other moments revealing a darker and brutal side. This striking contrast draws individuals from diverse backgrounds to his mercenary group. As leader of the Band of the Hawk, Griffith demonstrates a significant compassion for his comrades, expressing sorrow over their deaths, and even going so far as to sacrifice his own body to secure their survival. The deaths of those who are striving for his vision have a profound impact on Griffith. In order to manage this burden and to guarantee their sacrifice are not in vain, he resorts to a ruthless rationale, placing success above empathy, ironically demonstrating a form of compassion by stifling it. He continues to ponder the morality of his actions, at one juncture inquiring of Guts whether he is a cruel individual. Despite his fondness for his companions, Griffith perceives them as inferior, viewing them merely as instruments to realise his aspirations, with none meeting his standards of friendship. Among the countless allies and adversaries that Griffith encounters, Guts stands out as the sole individual capable of curbing his ambition. Griffith demonstrates a profound concern for Guts, even risking his own life on multiple occasions to ensure his safety, and he loses his composure whenever Guts is in peril. Following Guts' departure, Griffith experiences a deep shock that leads him to discard logical reasoning, ultimately resulting in his own downfall and that of the Band of the Hawk. During the year-long ordeal of his torture, the myriad emotions he holds for Guts serve as a source of sustenance in the bleakness of his solitary confinement. When he summons the eclipse and confronts a reflection of his true self, he embraces the repercussions of his ambition, and in the final moments of his humanity, he acknowledges Guts as the only person who ever allowed him to forget his dream. Thus he becomes Femto, a demonic transformation of Griffith, stripping him of his humanity while still preserving his memories, ambitions and ego. He professes to be free, though his heart remains frozen after facing the anguish of the comrades he sacrificed. Nevertheless, the residual emotions of the child that has merged with his form occasionally drive him to act contrary to his own interests and provoke tears from the child's enduring sense of longing. These feelings are transient, and Griffith contends that any emotional echoes from the child dissipate as soon as the child's claim over his vessel concludes. Casca. Casca was born the youngest of 6 children in a remote mountain village. As a young lone-born girl, hardships such as starvation and potential abduction were a normal fact of peasant life for Casca, giving her a pessimistic view of the world. When she was 12 years old, her parents sent her off to work as a castle maiden for a seemingly courteous nobleman. On the way to the castle, the nobleman revealed his true intentions, pursuing Casca from their carriage and forcibly restraining her with the intent to assault her. Just as she begins to yield, Griffith arrived on horseback and severed the nobleman's ear. Griffith offered his sword to Casca, urging her to wield it if there was something she wished to protect. As the nobleman lunged towards her, Casca seized the sword and aligned it with her attacker's chest, driving it through him and ultimately killing him. Overwhelmed by the unease stemming from her first act of violence, she found solace in Griffith's presence, becoming captivated by the extraordinary nature of her saviour from that moment onward. With her assailant dead and her prospects of reintegration into her village diminished, she resolved to join Griffith's band of the Hawk, having learned to assert herself rather than merely endure. One day after a battle, Casca, Griffith and Pippin stumbled upon the lifeless body of a young boy who had recently joined their band. Although Casca had never personally known the boy, Griffith was deeply affected by his untimely death. A few nights later, Casca observed Griffith standing on the balcony of the castle where they were stationed. She called out to him, but a feudal lord with a questionable interest in young boys was accompanying Griffith, beckoning him into his chambers. After casting a final glance at Casca, Griffith followed the lord inside. The following morning, Casca encountered Griffith bathing in the nearby river, where she inquired about his visit to the lord's room. Her suspicions regarding their intimate encounter were confirmed by Griffith. He explained to her that he didn't simply have relations with the lord due to mutual attraction. Rather, the noble offered a sizable war chest in exchange, which Griffith needed to curb the growing costs of maintaining the ever-growing band of the Hawk. Further explaining, he wanted to honour those who died under his command by achieving his dream as fast as possible. Casca then noticed Griffith became absorbed in his own words, and began to scratch a deep gash into his own arms, and proceeded to stop Griffith from self-harming behaviour by stepping into the water and embracing Griffith from behind. Before the occurrence of the 5th eclipse, Casca demonstrates herself to be a determined and capable leader within the Band of the Hawk, earning the respect of her fellow comrades. Her leadership is so formidable that she successfully unites the band during their most critical moments, effectively averting their complete destruction for an entire year following Griffith's imprisonment. She actively nurtures the morale among the ranks, leading to her affectionate nickname, Big Sis, bestowed upon her by the members of the Band of the Hawk. Even in the midst of the eclipse, Casca maintains her composure, instructing the band members to remain calm, form their ranks, and contribute as best they can. Casca's tough exterior and stern demeanour may be perceived as unfeminine, leading Judah to remark that she abandoned her femininity to become a mercenary. In truth, her identity as a woman is a vital aspect of who she is. She opts for men's attire due to its practicality in combat, rather than from any intrinsic desire to reject her femininity. At times, her identity as a woman causes her distress, although she conceals these insecurities behind a facade of harshness, resorting to physical aggression when feeling vulnerable. Beneath this protective surface, however, Casca longs for acceptance both as a warrior and as a woman, a validation she initially seeks from Griffith. In fact, she even spent 2 days in bed with an injured Guts to warm him, following Griffith's directive that warming a man is a woman's duty. Her loyalty and devotion to Griffith led her to cultivate a desire for strength, wishing to serve as his capable sword in the pursuit of his aspirations. Consequently, she initially harbored resentment towards Guts, feeling envious of the swordsman's increasing significance to her revered leader. In time, Casca comes to recognize the unreciprocated nature of her admiration for Griffith, while also developing an affection for Guts. ultimately transcending her reliance on Griffith's dream. Significantly, when Griffith decided to challenge Guts to a duel in an effort to prevent him from departing from the band, Casca intervenes, questioning her leader's challenge, an action that Judah observed that she would never have considered in the past, as she regarded Griffith's will as sacred. Subsequently, she begins to fall in love with the swordsman after he acknowledges her not only as a capable warrior, but also as a woman, fostering a relationship based on mutual honesty rather than unidimensional adoration. Because of the eclipse, Casca experiences profound psychological trauma, resulting in her regression to a predominantly mute and infantile state, wherein she is unable to engage in genuine thought or emotion. Although she exhibits a rudimentary form of empathy, she struggles to comprehend the feelings of others beyond immediate circumstances. Nevertheless, she demonstrates maternal affection towards her demon child and the Moonlight Boy, becoming visibly distressed when they suddenly disappear or are threatened. In her fragmented state, Casca nostalgically recalls her days as a hawk. However, deeper within her psyche, her mental imagery transforms into something starkly hostile and repulsive. This serves as a defense mechanism to protect her most deeply repressed memories. After her mind has been restored, Casca reverts to the person she was prior to the eclipse. It is evident that she has been conscious of everything that transpired during the years she spent in her previous state. She immediately recognizes Farnese upon seeing her and tears up with a smile when asked about Guts. However, Casca continues to endure significant psychological trauma to the extent that she is unable to look directly at Guts without being overwhelmed by a vivid flashback of the actual events of the eclipse and visions of Griffith's mutilated body. Guts entered the world under grim circumstances. Having been born from the corpse of his hanged mother beneath a tree, left to perish in a pool of blood and afterbirth. A mercenary group led by a man named Gambino eventually stumbled upon this scene, initially believing the infant to be lifeless. To their astonishment, when the baby began to cry, Shisu, an acquaintance of Gambino, instinctively rushed to the child's side to offer assistance. Despite his men deeming the circumstances surrounding Guts' birth as foreboding, Gambino permitted Shisu to keep Guts for her own solace. Tragically, 3 years later, Guts' surrogate mother succumbed to the plague while he helplessly watched. Under Gambino's guidance, Guts commenced his swordsmanship training at the tender age of 6. By the time he was 9, he had joined the mercenary band, viewing his leader as a paternal figure. On the night after Guts' inaugural skirmish, a mercenary named Donovan had his way with him in his tent, disclosing that he had purchased the boy for the night from Gambino. In a subsequent skirmish, the young mercenary confronted Donovan, isolating him and ultimately taking his life, disregarding the man's assertions from the previous night. Following Gambino's loss of his leg in battle, his relationship with Guts swiftly deteriorated. For 2 years after Gambino's injury, Guts endured various forms of verbal and physical abuse, which culminated in Gambino's attempted murder of him. Convinced that Guts was the source of his misfortunes, Gambino disclosed that he had sold Guts to Donovan, expressing his profound disdain for the boy's very existence. Heartbroken by this revelation, Guts acted in self-defense and killed Gambino, the closest figure he had ever had to a father. Consequently, he was attacked by Gambino's men and branded as a father killer, forcing him to flee with his pursuers in hot pursuit. Eventually cornered, he was shot off a cliff. Following his perilous fall and a confrontation with a pack of wolves below, he lost consciousness and was later discovered by another mercenary band, which then enlisted him as a child soldier. Much later, Guts finds himself on the losing side of a battle. Thus, Guts and his companions were captured and destined to serve as labourers for their captors. During their journey to the castle they were to assist in constructing, Guts encountered a man named Martino, who befriended the wounded young mercenary and seemingly facilitated his escape. However, Martino exploited Guts' attempt to flee as a diversion for his own escape, leaving Guts to be recaptured and imprisoned. In a cold cell, Guts encountered the melancholic spirit of a solitary flower named Chich, who tended to him as he recuperated in preparation for a confrontation with his captor's son. While nursing Guts back to health, Chich used up all her remaining petals and faded away. Grateful for her assistance, Guts resolved to carry Chich's remains to a valley filled with other flowers like her after his escape. Following his eventual victory over his captor's son and the subsequent assault on the castle by his band of mercenaries, who had been alerted by Martino regarding the castle's location and potential treasures, Guts fulfilled his promise to lay Chich's remains in a valley adorned with vibrant blooms. Renowned for his air of austerity, Guts is a hardened individual with a brutally realistic perspective on life. This outlook is a direct result of enduring relentless waves of suffering and numerous betrayals since his youth. as nearly all the significant moments in his life have, over time, transformed into disappointments. Despite his guarded and brooding exterior, he reveals a more easygoing and compassionate side in the presence of those he trusts, appearing significantly less unsociable and distant, although he still maintains his characteristic dry candor. Even as the inner darkness festers within him and its allure becomes increasingly difficult to resist, he remains steadfast in his empathy and compassion, refusing to relinquish his humanity. During his formative years, Guts finds himself lacking a genuine purpose in life, engaging in mercenary work as a child. As a blank slate, he yearns for validation from those he holds in high regard, feeling content as long as one person looks his way. His initial instability gradually evolves into a sense of individuality as he cultivates a camaraderie with the Band of the Hawk, particularly with Griffith, a figure he ultimately aspires to stand beside as an equal. After parting ways with the Band of the Hawk, Guts embarks on a journey of self-discovery, during which he recognizes his enduring connection to and passion for the sword. Upon this realization, he dedicates himself to refining his skills and confronting increasingly formidable adversaries, thereby uncovering a renewed sense of purpose in life. Following his survival of the eclipse, Guts becomes consumed by a desire for vengeance, fixated on hunting down and exterminating any apostle he encounters. His primary focus, however, is to exact retribution on Griffith and the Godhand. For 2 years, he leaves behind a regressed Casca to pursue his relentless war against demonkind. During this period, Guts becomes increasingly self-absorbed and withdrawn, showing indifference to the suffering of others and harbouring disdain for those he perceives as weak. His reclusive disposition and antagonism towards individuals attempting to reach out to him stem from a profound fear of forming new emotional bonds, as he dreads the possibility of losing new companions as he did during the eclipse. Gradually, largely influenced by the efforts of Puck, Guts begins to abandon his solitary struggle and seeks the assistance of fellow travellers, slowly nurturing new friendships with them. Despite his initial reluctance to express affection for his new comrades, he ultimately learns to value the connections he forms and finds himself appreciative of their unique strengths. The Dragon Slayer is the most valuable weapon to Guts. The blacksmith Gordo, when he was young, resided in a castle town that was situated far from the humble dwelling he would eventually come to regard as home. When the sovereign of the castle town, a king, issued a decree to all his vessels to craft a sword capable of slaying a dragon, Gordo's lord assigned him this formidable task. Wearied by the constant demand for intricately designed weapons from nobles who prioritize elegance over functionality, Gordo approached the challenge with earnestness, ultimately producing the colossal yet impractical weapon known as the Dragon Slayer. Infuriated by the crude and unstable nature of the Dragon Slayer, Gordo's lord threatened his life, compelling Gordo to escape the castle town and establish himself in his mine. The Dragon Slayer remained in storage for several years, until it was unearthed by Guts during a confrontation with the unidentified wandering apostle. The Black Swordsman wielded the sword with surprising ease, dispatching the apostle in just 2 swings, much to the astonishment of Gordo, who had previously believed that the sword's weight rendered it impractical as a weapon. Subsequently, Guts embarked on a relentless campaign against demonkind, utilizing the Dragon Slayer effectively against malevolent spirits, possessed creatures, and notably other apostles. Upon Guts' return to Gordo's dwelling 2 years later, Gordo observed the significant wear and tear that the Dragon Slayer had endured, and made the decision to reforge it. When Slan takes on a rudimentary form in Clippeth to confront Guts, the Skull Knight intervenes and observes that the Dragon Slayer has been forged by the malice of the numerous malevolent astral beings it has defeated, thus enabling it to inflict harm upon Slan's assumed form. Armed with this understanding, Guts thrusts the Dragon Slayer into Slan, resulting in the sudden deterioration of her troll-like form. In the Bay of Ritannis, during Guts' confrontation with the Kushan wizard General Deba, the Dragon Slayer becomes infused with the power of a fire spirit of war, which is summoned by Schierke. Guts wields the enhanced sword to unleash a searing blast against the Kundalini that is supporting Deba, resulting in the magical creature's substantial water form disintegrating. Given the sword's remarkable size and weight, the Dragon Slayer operates more akin to a bladed maul than a traditional sword. Nevertheless, Guts demonstrates an impressive ability to wield it effectively, cutting through a variety of targets. The immense momentum generated by Guts as he swings the weapon can dismember anyone unfortunate enough to be caught in its path with a single strike. This technique is often employed against multiple enemies simultaneously, cleaving through several foes in just one swing. Even apostles in their true forms find it challenging to withstand the force of the sword, frequently suffering severe damage to their bones and internal organs from an attack delivered by this formidable weapon. Additionally, the considerable size and weight of the Dragon Slayer afforded a degree of versatility, as Guts has been known to use the broadside of the blade to crush and flatten numerous opponents. The width of the Dragon Slayer also enables Guts to employ it defensively, serving as a substitute for a shield. Kentaro and Miura initially conceived the character of an Asian male wielding a Japanese sword, complete with a distinctive feature on his left hand, set against a backdrop reminiscent of medieval Europe. After considerable reflection, he concluded that the most compelling elements would be the Dragon Slayer and prosthetic cannon arm. Miura has acknowledged that the concept of colossal sword was initially intended merely as a gimmick, to capture the interest of readers. Furthermore, he has observed that while large swords have appeared in fiction before Berserk, he believes they were simply depicted as oversized, rather than conveying a sense of true weight, or conveying realistic reactions when swung. With the Dragon Slayer, Miura aimed to create the impression that an individual with the build of a professional wrestler might be able to wield it once or twice. Consequently, he devoted considerable thought to the amount of muscle his main character would require to effectively swing such a formidable sword. In the initial concept of Guts, his iconic weapon was envisioned as a katana, rather than the Grand Dragon Slayer. In Berserk the prototype, the Dragon Slayer features a somewhat altered design, with the blade widening towards its hilt, to create an appearance akin to a crossguard. Furthermore, Guts exclusively wields the Dragon Slayer in his right hand, never using both his right hand and his left mechanical arm to handle the sword simultaneously. Above all else, Guts embodies perseverance and resilience. Throughout his numerous trials and tribulations, he has never surrendered to the forces of fate, and continues to survive against what appear to be insurmountable challenges. Guts is a fervent critic of the concept of destiny, firmly believing that his actions are ultimately a result of his own choices, disregarding any notion of predetermined certainty. Circa 18 before their 5th eclipse, Princess Charlotte was born, but before we talk about her, it is essential to consider her father, the King of Midland. Initially, the king was predominantly perceived as a fair, wise and generous individual, having welcomed the Band of the Hawk into the ranks of the nobility and rewarding them lavishly for their support against Tudor. The king held Griffith in high regard, acknowledging his talent and value, a recognition that was not shared by other nobles, particularly Julius, who dismissed Griffith due to his lower-class origins. Furthermore, the king was viewed by his second wife as a commendable monarch, albeit a lacking husband and lover. However, he harboured a secret that ultimately propelled him into descent into madness, an unacknowledged desire for his daughter, Charlotte. At a certain point during his reign, he began to perceive his royal status as a burden, growing increasingly resentful of his stresses and pressures associated with the position as the ruler of Midland. In his quest for solace, he turned to his daughter, whom he cherished deeply and considered the sole positive aspect of his existence. Yet when this affection morphed into lust, he committed an atrocious act against her. Charlotte's growing disdain for her father exacerbated his descent into insanity, as he came to the horrifying realization that he had perpetuated an act lower than even a devil's against her. Upon learning that Griffith was engaged in an intimate relationship with Charlotte, the admiration he once held for the knight swiftly transformed into disdain. He resolved to take matters into his own hands, determined to personally administer punishment to Griffith, subjecting him to lashes within the confines of his dungeon. Following Griffith's realization of the king's feelings towards his daughter, the king became increasingly irrational, instigating the daily brutal torture of Griffith. He even resorted to threatening his guards, warning them that should they ever disclose Griffith's words to anyone, their families would face execution. The king accused Griffith of stealing Charlotte from him through his persuasive speech. For 2 years, his obsession with Griffith compelled him to deploy 7/10 of the military in a relentless pursuit of the knight. He would eventually succumb to a fatal illness. On his deathbed, the king experienced a vision of the Hawk of Light in a dream, a phenomenon shared by many in his kingdom. In his delirious state, he envisions himself seated on his throne, his soldiers preventing him from reaching his daughter. It is then that the Hawk of Light materializes behind her, ultimately revealing itself to be Griffith. This sight prompts the king to ponder, in his final moments, whether what he truly desired was someone to liberate him from the weight of his responsibility as a ruler. Princess Charlotte. Charlotte Beatrix Marie Rory Windham is the Princess of Midland. She is a reserved and socially distant individual, characterized by her soft-spoken and polite demeanor. Her father describes her as shy, rarely venturing beyond the confines of Windham's palace. She remained steadfastly loyal to Griffith, even after he endured torture and subsequent disfigurement. Although she nearly dismisses Griffith's rescue from Ganishka as a reminiscent of a childhood fantasy, she officially declares herself his fiancée upon his return. Charlotte harbours a strong aversion to warfare and hunting, perceiving them as mere pastimes for men reveling in the shedding of blood. She also expresses discontent with the extravagant parties that take place during wartime. Despite regarding herself as a sheltered girl who knows nothing and is unable to do anything, and feeling as though she might just be a burden, she possesses remarkable strength of will. She defends her choice to support Griffith in the face of her mother's disapproval, discreetly conveys information to the Band of the Hawk as a spy, and even bribes a prison guard during a rescue operation. Notably, she intervenes to prevent a poisoned dart from harming Griffith, and following the establishment of Falconia, she drafted legislation to support orphanages. Casca observed that, despite her status as a princess, Charlotte does not exhibit the typical haughty demeanour associated with royalty or nobility. Rather, she is cheerful and kind-hearted. Charlotte takes the time to apologise to Casca and the Band of the Hawk for the actions of her father towards Griffith. Charlotte developed a deep-seated resentment towards her father due to his prolonged imprisonment and the brutal torture inflicted upon Griffith, particularly after he learned of Charlotte's intimate relationship with him. Her perception of him as a father figure vanished when he made an attempt to assault her. Nevertheless, she found herself in tears at the news of his death. Farnese. Approximately a year after the birth of Charlotte, Farnese de Vandimion would enter the world. Farnese's early years were characterized by a profound sense of neglect, as her father Federico III devoted himself entirely to his professional obligations, while her mother chose to indulge in various hedonistic pursuits. Left to navigate the vastness of the Vandimion mansion on her own, Farnese's behaviour gradually became more erratic, evoking a sense of dread among her caretakers. In an effort to confront the fears she faced in solitude, she immersed herself in the very sources of those fears, seeking to embody them. Notably, she became involved in the nocturnal burnings of heretics that took place in the plaza visible from her bedroom, an event that initially terrified her. Through this engagement, she developed an unsettling fondness for such spectacles. Over time, she discovers a sense of solace in the act of burning various objects that she found unappealing. One evening, Farnese stumbled upon an incapacitated young boy named Serpico. She arranged for him to be taken to her family estate, where she tended to his injuries. As a form of recompense for saving him, she appointed the young boy as her page, ensuring he was at her service. The two formed a bond over their shared experiences of neglect, and much of her erratic behaviour subsided with Serpico acting as her attendant. When Farnese, at the age of 16, was subjected to an arranged marriage by her father, she expressed her defiance by setting fire to the family estate. In response, Federico sent her to a convent, where she ultimately secured a position as the leader of the Holy Iron Chain Knights. A year following the conclusion of the 100-Year War, Farnese is dispatched by the Holy See to investigate a prophecy located along the border of Midland. This prophecy predicts the birth of an angel at the moment the sun dies for the 5th time, with a red lake identified as the site of this momentous event. Following a solar eclipse, Farnese and her troops discovered the foreseen Red Lake, a substantial pool of blood, stained crimson with remnants of blood and countless dismembered men and horses. Upon witnessing this grim sight, Farnese concludes that the angel foretold in this prophecy is none other than the Hawk of Darkness, destined to usher in an era of despair. Shortly thereafter, Farnese is assigned the task of investigating the Black Swordsman, whom the Holy See suspect to have the connection to the Hawk of Darkness. Farnese experienced neglect from her parents and was consumed by fear of heretic burnings prevalent during that era. But one evening she found the courage to participate in the execution of a heretic, and in doing so, she experienced a marvellous burning in her underbelly, deriving a sense of enjoyment from the act. Embracing her pyrophilia as the commander of the Holy Iron Chain Knights, Farnese began to hunt and burn alleged heretics at the stake, fostering a sadistic pleasure, of which she ultimately remains in denial. She displays minimal affection towards others, and exhibits an even greater sense of joy in the act of burning heretics. Nevertheless, despite her sadistic inclinations, she harbours empathy for those she deems innocent, and generally wishes for their well-being. Although she does grapple with the morality of her actions, she manages to persuade herself of their justification. Moreover, upon encountering the fanatical Holy See Inquisitor Mosgus, she finds reassurance in the Inquisitor's assertions that their actions stem from their faith in God. Encountering Guts acts as a catalyst for a profound shift in Farnese's perspective on life. Following her abduction by the Black Swordsman and the harrowing experiences she endures that night, her faith begins to falter, leading her to develop a fear of him, which becomes a pivotal factor in her increasingly disillusionment. Witnessing Guts display remarkable resilience in the face of seemingly insurmountable odds during the incarnation ceremony compels Farnese to embrace a more secular outlook. She decides to accompany Guts in her quest to acquire the skills necessary to navigate a world where the light of the Holy See no longer shines. As she travels alongside Guts, Farnese becomes acutely aware of her own feelings of inadequacy and powerlessness in comparison to her companions. Through this process of self-reflection, she begins to comprehend the motivations behind her previous attempts to project an image of grandeur and dominate others. Over time, she develops a genuine affection for Casca, whom she cares for as a devoted caretaker, demonstrating a newfound sense of selflessness in her actions. The bravery she experiences while wielding a magical silver dagger to protect Casca and Griffith ignites in her a fascination with magic. Consequently, she becomes Schierke's pupil and dedicates herself wholeheartedly to the study of this mystical art. After spending a considerable amount of time journeying with Guts, Farnese develops a strong fondness of him, nurturing a profound admiration for the swordsman. This admiration motivates her to refine her magical abilities in order to be of greater assistance to him. Any signs of reassurance or gratitude from Guts leave Farnese filled with immense joy. However, despite her nurturing and maternal instincts towards Casca, she is troubled by the reality that Guts has Guts' unwavering affection. Serpico, born as the illegitimate son of Federico di Vandimion III and a former maid of House Vandimion in the Holy City, Serpico took on the responsibility of caring for his mother from a young age when she became ill. During his struggles with other children over food and medicine, he discovered the existence of his father and was gifted a locket containing a portrait of his mother alongside Federico. By a twist of fate, Serpico entered the service of House Vandimion at the tender age of 10, having been found severely injured by Farnese in an alleyway. Farnese took the young boy under her wing as a companion. Over time, as Serpico learned more about Farnese, he developed a profound bond with her. One day, Serpico encountered Federico, who recognized him as his biological son, upon noticing the locket around the boy's neck. Federico, however, was reluctant to accept another son amidst the already fraught family succession conflict. Thus he granted Serpico a noble status, promising him continual advancement in rank in exchange for maintaining the secrecy of their family connection and for looking after Farnese. Years later, Serpico became a member of the Holy Iron Chain Knights after Farnese assumed command of the group. He followed her without question, despite his profound discontent regarding the execution of innocent individuals, whom the Holy See had accused of heresy due to their low social status. His experiences led him to perceive the religious organization as one driven by greed. In a particularly harrowing demonstration of loyalty, he was compelled to burn his own mother, who was afflicted with dementia, at the stake on Farnese's orders. Serpico is characterized by his politeness, gentlemanly demeanor, and sincerity. He is very protective of his half-sister Farnese, attending to her every desire and viewing her as a guardian angel who rescued him from his former life on the streets. Despite having endured abuse from Farnese in the past, Serpico prioritizes her safety and well-being above all else. He has developed a strong aversion to the admiration Farnese holds for Guts, fearing that the darkness within him could ultimately bring harm to his half-sister. However, after rejoining Guts' party and embarking on a journey to Elfhelm, Serpico learned to place his trust in the Black Swordsman and the rest of the group. He fought alongside them, engaged in frequent conversation, and empathized with their struggles. His relationship with Farnese has evolved significantly since their extended adventure together and the arrival of Roderick. Serpico learned at a young age that violence begets violence, and avoided creating situations of conflict whenever possible. For instance, as a youth, Farnese often duped nobles into dueling Serpico. Well aware that Serpico was a far superior duelist to any of them, she wished to see them hurt and humiliated by him. However, Serpico never sought to do either, and virtually always ended the duel with a draw, while complementing the skills of his opponent. This way, he resolved these conflicts without either needing to kill his opponents or be concerned with future vengeance from them. Due to a troubled upbringing and dislike of conflict, he typically hides his emotional state behind a facade of incompetence and naivety. However, Serpico's true nature is seen to be one of tremendous focus, ruthfulness, and emotional detachment. He strives to protect those he cares for, and he tends to brush off even the most dire of situations with a sardonic quip. He is capable of dropping and raising his typical facade at any moment's notice as well, oftentimes confusing his human adversaries with how difficult he tends to be read. After travelling with Guts for a time, however, he noticed that he began to have a more difficult time maintaining his detachment and aloof coldness in light of the positive effects Guts has had on Farnese, as he was grateful to see these effects, but increasingly frightened that Guts might one day kill her under the influence of the Berserk armor. Hey you, I hope you are doing well. If you're sleeping, I hope you are sleeping well. If you're working or studying, I hope you get through it. And if you have me on in the background, what's up? How you doing? Okay, back to the video. Schierke expresses a maturity beyond her years, characterized by her quiet and introspective nature. As a disciple, she demonstrated profound respect for her mistress and experienced deep sorrow following her passing. Currently, she maintains amicable relationships with the majority of Guts' companions, as well with unfamiliar individuals like Sonia and Isma. Due to her somewhat sheltered upbringing, she harbours a certain disdain for the human world and the doctrines of the Holy See. However, she finds life outside the confines of the forest manageable while journeying alongside her friends. Despite being kind and generally amiable, she often finds herself unsettled and irritated by Isidro's conduct. She perceives Isidro as an inept fool and frequently ridicules his intelligence, which creates some tension between the two and often leads to humorous situations. Initially, Schierke harboured a dislike for Guts because of his brusque and forthright manner. However, as time has passed and circumstances have evolved, she has developed an infatuation for him that resembles a crush. Guts, having become aware of this due to an incident involving the Valvertes and Schierke, appears to overlook it and treats her much like a younger sister. He exhibits a protective nature towards Schierke, and the young girl is acutely aware of this. During their brief sojourn at a nearby tavern, when a man soils Schierke's clothing, Guts reacts by pushing him for staining their girl's finest garments. Later, when Sonia proposes that Schierke join the Band of the Hawk, Schierke considers Guts before ultimately declining the offer. Moreover, Schierke is uniquely capable of drawing Guts out of the trance brought on by the Berserker armour. However, she acknowledges that the risks and challenges associated with his endeavour will undoubtedly escalate if Guts continues to depend on it. When Roderick inquires whether Casca is Guts' partner, Schierke overhears the response and experiences a sense of unease. Nonetheless, she understands that her connection with Guts is singular. She is the only one who can help him maintain his sanity while under the influence of the Berserker armour. Schierke has dedicated a significant portion of her life to the study of witchcraft under the immensely powerful witch Flora, which has resulted in her becoming exceptionally skilled for her age. This extensive training has rendered her a highly valuable member of the Black Swordsman Party, earning her the respect and appreciation of all its members. She has been instrumental in assisting the group during some of their most perilous encounters with the apostles, and possesses the capability to combat the demons that torment Casca's mind. Her contributions were particularly notable during the battle in Enoch Village and against the trolls in Griffith. Schierke has exhibited the following abilities: odd sensing and manipulation. Schierke possesses a profound awareness of the flow of odd within her environment, enabling her to track individuals and engage with them effectively. Furthermore, she has the ability to redirect odd, primarily to shift a person's focus or attention elsewhere. Thought transference. By utilising her hair as a conduit and bestowing one upon an individual with whom she wishes to communicate, Schierke can establish telepathic connections over considerable distances. This technique also allows her to create a visual link, granting her the ability to perceive what the other person is experiencing. Astral projection. Schierke can detach her astral body from her physical form, enabling her to navigate the astral realm. However, this ability carries the risk of becoming lost and adrift in the astral world, thus necessitating her careful maintenance of a connection to her physical body, symbolized by a luminous cord. Through this method, she can perform various contextual tasks, such as interacting with the Berserker armor and infiltrating it, which ultimately helps her to extricate Guts from his frenzied bouts of violence. Talismans. Although not as skilled as her mentor, Schierke is capable of inscribing a protective seal over the brand of sacrifice, thereby diminishing its allure to monsters and spirits. Fire spell. Schierke employs her hair as a catalyst for the flow of odd to conjure fire. By tossing her hair into the air, each strand ignites and transforms into slender fire elementals. Elemental casting. Schierke possesses the ability to summon elementals for assistance and bind them to her will, allowing her to harness their powers. However, to successfully cast these spells, she requires a substantial amount of uninterrupted time for concentration and connection. Depending on the spirit she invokes, she can become a formidable force, capable of flooding the town of Enoch and sweeping away trolls with the Lady of the Deep Water, or incinerating opponents with the Wheel of Fire. Astral barrier. By seeking the aid of the four cardinal kings, Schierke can, given sufficient time, create barriers that repel astral entities and disintegrate any beings caught within them. While these barriers are highly effective against entities originating from the astral realm, such as trolls, their efficacy is limited when confronted with physical objects and corporeal beings, such as Pishaka. Mind alteration. By deftly waving the tip of her staff, Schierke can render individuals more susceptible to her requests. For instance, she is able to induce a temporary, monkey-like state in Isidro and compel two gods from Vritannis to reveal the circumstances surrounding the demise of the Kushan slaves. Puck. Puck embodies a whimsical and light-hearted spirit, which serves as a stark contrast to Guts' brooding, cynical and reclusive nature. Rather than taking people's actions at face value, Puck actively seeks to uncover the inherent goodness in those he encounters, choosing not to dismiss them based solely on initial impressions. This inclination leads Puck to exhibit considerable patience when interacting with morally ambiguous individuals, particularly during his early travels with Guts, where he endured consistent verbal and physical mistreatment. Over time, Puck realizes that he possesses a certain moral compass and a rationale behind his seemingly reckless behavior. Nevertheless, his patience is not without limits. There have been numerous instances where Puck and Guts have gone their separate ways, driven by Puck's frustration and his inability to continue tolerating the Black Swordsman's cruelty and audacity. Despite these conflicts, Puck constantly returns, drawn by the belief that there is good within Guts. Originally from the elven kingdom of Elfhelm, Puck engaged in a quarrel with a seagull over a fish, an argument that proved to be futile. Following this altercation, he rode upon the bird to make his way back home. Nevertheless, although he later asserted that he had departed from his kingdom solely out of boredom, Puck inadvertently fell off the seagull's back while asleep and found himself stranded on the mainland. Puck can exhibit considerable stubbornness on occasion, as demonstrated when he declines to return Guts' Behelit when on board on the seahorse, preferring instead to use it as bait for fishing. This characteristic of Puck is primarily used for comedic purposes. Furthermore, Puck displays a notable possessiveness towards the Behelit, having affectionately dubbed the fetish Betchy and asserting that it has a fondness for cheese. When receiving compliments, whether individually or as part of a group, Puck and Isidro typically boast about their ability to handle matters independently. However, both greatly inflate their own skills in combat. The two share a close friendship, with Puck often perching on Isidro's head, viewing himself as a mentor for the young boy. He endeavours to instruct Isidro in the technique of his elf dimension style, albeit with minimal success. In sharp contrast to his relationship with Isidro, Puck frequently finds himself at odds with his fellow elf, Ivalra, as she is generally more serious and less exuberant than the average pixie. Puck tries to demonstrate to Ivalra their inherent similarities, yet she consistently regards him with disdain. Although Puck's role primarily appears to be that of comic relief, he shows a notable seriousness when the situation demands it. He effortlessly forms friendships with individuals deemed innocent, such as Jill, and he listens with genuine empathy upon learning of their tragic backgrounds. When he encountered Guts, the mercenary has reverted to his former state of mistrust, callousness, and general contempt prior to his affiliation with the Band of the Hawk. Puck frequently challenges Guts' treatment of others, deeming it unnecessarily cruel. In the Lost Children chapter, Puck reprimands Guts harshly for his attack on Rosine. Guts finds himself questioning whether he truly held back against her. As time progresses and Guts begins to regain the trust of others, such as Farnese and Isidro, while also displaying compassion, Puck gradually shifts from a role of reprimanding Guts to one that encourages him to reject his more monstrous tendencies, ultimately becoming more of a source of comic relief. Puck possesses several attributes that are characteristics of his species, the most notable of which include flight. This serves as his primary mode of transportation. Puck is compelled to use his wings to keep pace with his travelling partners. However, he is occasionally observed perched on his companions or nestled within Guts' satchel. Empathy. Puck has the ability to perceive the emotions of those around him, which directly influence his own state of well-being. He experiences pain in proportion to the negative emotions felt by others in his vicinity, while positive thoughts provide him with a sense of physical comfort. Elf dust. Puck is capable of producing elf dust, which naturally sheds from his wings. This substance possesses remarkable healing properties, significantly enhancing the healing process for an average human and alleviating pain almost instantaneously. This ability was a key factor in persuading the somewhat irritable Guts to permit Puck to accompany him on his journey. Additionally, he has the capacity to emit light, which he has creatively transformed into a diversionary tactic known as Puck Spark. This technique temporarily blinds his adversaries and can eliminate small spirits. Ivalra. Ivalra is an elf of the pixie race, descendant of the ancient spirits of the wind. She is a member of Guts' travelling party and a lifelong friend to Schierke. As an elf, Ivalra is small and has 2 pairs of wings on her back. She is about the same size as Puck, but instead of having a green/blue aura, she has a pink one. Also unlike Puck, she is not naked, appearing to wear some sort of halter and skirt. Like Puck, Ivalra possesses the remarkable ability of empathy, enabling her to perceive the emotions of those around her. Over time, she's refined this skill, particularly attuning herself to the feelings of Schierke. In doing so, Ivalra adopted a protective and almost maternal role, safeguarding Schierke from distress and advising the other members of their group on how to respond should Schierke push herself too far and lapse into a deep trance from which she cannot awake independently. While Ivalra presents as more serious and dependable than Puck, she frequently engages in playful banter and disagreements with him. Essentially, Ivalra acts as Schierke's best friend and the voice of her inner thoughts. Ivalra's initial mistrust towards Guts was a way to protect her companion, much like how Puck's overeagerness was a way to protect Guts from his inner turmoil. Puck shares a domineering yet affectionate relationship with Isidro, striving to shape him into a young adult and warrior in his own humorous manner. Ivalra maintains a comparable dynamic with Farnese. Upon learning of her aspirations to study magic under Schierke, Ivalra began to tease the noblewoman frequently, playfully comparing her status to that of an apprentice and servant maid in relation to her responsibilities towards Casca. However, it is important to note that Ivalra does not take advantage of or mistreat Farnese. As Isidro and Puck struggle to comprehend the serious demeanour of Schierke and Ivalra, Ivalra finds herself considerably unsettled by Isidro's behaviour. She confides in Schierke, sharing their mutual impression of the young boy as an incompetent monkey. Although she belongs to the same race as Puck, she endeavours to distinguish herself from the average pixie, perceiving herself as more serious, reliable and well educated than the light-hearted, carefree members of her kind. This sentiment mirrors Schierke's perspective on Isidro. Consequently, Ivalra frequently engages in quarrels with Puck. During these exchanges, she often adopts a whimsical attitude, even transforming into a super deformed, chibi version of herself, reminiscent of the style Miura employed to accentuate Puck's more playful moments. And all the abilities that Ivalra possesses are exactly like Puck's. Elfhelm. Elfhelm was the residence of the Elves, a utopian kingdom situated on the island of Skellig in the Western Sea. Similar to Flora's Spirituary Mansion, it existed in the interstice prior to the Great Wave of the astral world. Numerous magic users inhabited a village within the boundaries of this realm, coexisting with the elves and their sovereign, the Flowerstone Monarch, alongside a diverse array of other mystical beings. Elfhelm was an uncharted, serene paradise where an abundance of food was readily available, with trees that spontaneously regrew cherries upon being plucked, and a community that engaged in play every day. At the heart of Elfhelm stood a colossal cherry blossom tree, which served as the residence of the realm's sovereign, the Flowerstone Monarch. A distinctive characteristic of the island and its surrounding areas, such as cores, was its unique perspective of time, which differed significantly from that of the external world. Furthermore, the trees within the Flowerstone Monarch's domain were remarkably large, yet they did not obstruct the sunlight from reaching the ground. Rather, they seemed to radiate light themselves. Although the land itself was not inherently dangerous, numerous enchantments had been cast around it to deter outsiders from the Great Wave from the astral world and the realm's subsequent merging with the physical world. One particular enchantment caused outsiders to believe they were walking in a straight line, only to find themselves back at their original starting point. Only the natives remained unaffected by this barrier, allowing them to navigate through it with ease. Additionally, a magical pumpkin patch, surrounded by scarecrows, encircled Elfhelm. These scarecrows would attack any intruders who dared to touch the produce, and even the pumpkins themselves could be imbued with the power of gnomes, earth spirits, by witches as a means of repelling trespassers. Under the watchful eye of the Flowerstone Monarch, Elfhelm served as a sanctuary for a diverse array of celestial beings. This included unicorns, fauns, centaurs, dwarfs, brownies, harpies, and anthropomorphic deer and fox creatures, alongside the elves themselves, all of whom coexisted harmoniously in the predominantly elfin realm. Additionally, various elementals made their home there. However, the presence of heavy elementals, known as Barties, was minimal in Elfhelm. These entities cast a shadow over the atmosphere and imposed a weight on everything in their vicinity, dampening spirits and nurturing obsessions, which led to a challenging relationship with the realm's inhabitants. Residing within a witch colony, governors Gedfring, Skirbil, Thrain, and Ginar regarded their kingdom as their home. The Flowerstone Monarch took care of the elders and prepared their meals in order to maintain harmonious relationships with the colony. Furthermore, Puck's twin brothers, Pick, Peck, Pack, and Pog, were all originally from and continue to live in the kingdom. Although it was unusual for the residents of Elfhelm to venture beyond their homeland, a few individuals did choose to leave for various reasons, including Puck, who eventually returned accompanied by Guts and the rest of his travelling companions. When questioned about his decision to leave such a picturesque place, Puck candidly admitted that he had simply grown weary of it. In truth, the elf had fallen asleep atop a bird and awoke to find himself on a vessel bound for the mainland, thus becoming separated from his beloved home. Similarly, Flora also departed from the island community after violating a taboo. She opted to reside within a spirit tree, where she watched over it until her passing. Nevertheless, the majority of Elfhelm's inhabitants had never ventured beyond Skellig, harbouring a sense of curiosity about the outside world and expressing wonder at the arrival of new visitors. The Flowerstone monarch, whose real name is Danan, is the queen of the elves, ruling over Elfhelm on the island of Skellig. In her true form, Danan is a humanoid elf who, unlike previous depicted elves, is comparable in size to humans. According to the artwork by Kentaro Miura, her skin possesses a pale pink hue, while her long hair and dress are composed of deep pink flower petals. She features bright white antennae atop her head, and insect wings reminiscent of those of dragonflies. Her eyes are coral pink, and she consistently carries a long cane adorned with a pearl at its tip. In the illustrations by Studio Gaga, her more human-like form reveals hair with a yellowish-green tint, and round red jewels that resemble tree fruits. She is dressed in purple garments akin to those worn by Schierke, complemented by a blue jewel that rests prominently on her forehead. Her hat is embellished with flowers, and her cape is secured with a heart-shaped brooch. In this particular form, she is invariably depicted with her eyes closed. In legend, the Flowerstone monarch is renowned for her extraordinary power. Consequently, her name is inscribed not only in the Grimoires, but also in numerous poems and tales. The Skull Knight confronts Guts on the shore near Vritannis, and recognizing the swordsman's aim of reaching Elfhelm, offers his fellow sufferer a glimmer of hope that the ruler of the land he seeks may have the ability to restore Casca's mind. Upon Guts and his companions' arrival in Elfhelm, the resident witch Kuka elucidates that the Flowerstone monarch has access to the Corridor of Dreams, a mystical pathway that allows her to heal the fragmented minds of individuals by delving into the deepest recesses of their hearts. Isidro. Isidro is a young runaway thief who joins Guts in his travels as a member of the swordsman travelling party. Isidro has always harboured aspirations of becoming, if not a soldier, the finest mercenary warrior of his era. His ambitions are inspired by the legend of a once mighty captain known as the Great 100-Man Slayer, who fought alongside the original Band of the Hawk. Although Guts has never disclosed to Isidro that he is in fact the young boy's idol, he has nonetheless supported his aspirations. As a younger member of the group, Isidro regards Guts as a father figure, despite Guts' insistence on the contrary. At present, Isidro is undergoing training under Guts, with the hope of realising his dream of becoming the greatest swordsman in the world. Instead of teaching Isidro specific combat techniques, Guts encourages him to develop his own fighting style, recognizing that each individual possesses unique strengths, speeds, heights, and arm reaches. Isidro hones a spinning move with a cutlass, which was inherited from Morgan, and utilizes the salamander dagger, a gift from Flora. During a confrontation with pirates, Mule Wolfflame criticizes Isidro for not approaching the fight with the seriousness it demands, pointing out that he refrains from employing moves capable of inflicting serious harm or death on his adversaries. Additionally, Isidro's relationship with Schierke is notably strained. She perceives him as having the appearance and intellect of a monkey. Nevertheless, despite his seemingly cynical exterior, Isidro occasionally demonstrates a degree of care for the young witch. In fact, Sonia, upon overhearing Schierke discuss her connection with Guts and observing Isidro's willingness to battle Bonebeard on her behalf, gleefully inquires whether the swordsman Schierke finds attractive is none other than Isidro himself. Despite his character flaws, Guts has shown a certain level of faith in Isidro's abilities, encouraging him to discover a fighting style that is more suited to him than the one Gambino had provided for Guts. Although Guts is reluctant to officially label Isidro as his apprentice, he constantly offers him words of wisdom and encouragement. Although he and Schierke frequently engage in disagreements, he holds a deep affection for her and for women in general. This is exemplified when he defends Isma upon her revelation as a mermaid, and when Isma finds herself without a place to stay, he jovially requests Roderick to allow her to join the crew of the Seahorse. Nevertheless, he also becomes easily flustered in the presence of women, particularly when their bodies are partially exposed, as demonstrated when he rescued and exposed Nina from the clutches of the heretic party. Isidro also finds Casca alluring and attempts to observe her while she bathes, but his efforts are thwarted by Schierke. Magnifico. Magnifico di Vandimion is the younger son of Federico di Vandimion III and Lady Vandimion, and brother to Farnese. Thus he was raised in an environment that emphasized a life of privilege and proper manners. Nevertheless, he exhibits cowardice, easily frightened by unfamiliar situations, and tends to hide whenever a conflict arises. His disapproval of his sister's transformation into a witch is evident, as he vocalizes his discomfort every time she performs magic. While he generally possesses a good-natured disposition and does not exhibit overt malevolence, he is nonetheless portrayed as scheming, opportunistic, and manipulative, often utilizing others to achieve his own ends. A good example of this is his behavior in his orchestration of a marriage between his sister Farnese and his childhood friend Roderick, all for the purpose of securing a ship for Guts' new party. He did this without informing anyone, intending to confront his father, who failed to acknowledge his talents. Moreover, Magnifico is depicted as exceedingly greedy, seizing any opportunity to generate profit. Upon discovering that his sister and her companions were headed to a location populated by elves, he attempted to persuade Roderick to assist him in conquering, capturing, and selling the elves. However, Roderick was uninterested, and Puck overheard their conversation. In a bid to win Puck over, Magnifico attempted to bribe him with the prospect of becoming the new king of the elves, only to be comically embarrassed by Puck's response. Following the observation of a protection spell, he remarked that substantial wealth could be acquired from teaching it. His mother has remarked that Magnifico is increasingly mirroring the traits of his father during his own youth. Roderick. Roderick is the childhood companion of Magnifico and the fiancé of Farnese. He holds the position of the third in line for the throne of Wise, and serves as an officer and captain of the Wise fleet, which is at the forefront of the Holy See Alliance Navy. His flagship is named the Seahorse. Roderick is quick-witted, perceptive, decisive, and competent captain. Although he is presented with the opportunity to marry Farnese as a part of her brother's Magnifico scheme, and despite his awareness of the unfortunate rumours and truth surrounding her childhood, he harbours no ill feelings towards her and develops a sincere interest in her. Roderick appears resolute in demonstrating a gentlemanly demeanour, consistently treating women with dignity, respect, and grace, even during turmoil. He is known to be a flatterer, albeit one who is genuine, referring to Farnese as a goddess, commanding angels due to her exceptional efforts in safeguarding their ship and its crew. As a nobleman of the sea, he takes immense pride in his skills in the maritime combat and does not hesitate to demonstrate them. Whether on land or at sea, he is quick to defend the innocent and wisely chooses to leave the more formidable foes to those with greater experience. He is also receptive to the counsel of those who possess more knowledge than he does. For instance, during the encounter with the tiger Pashaka in Vertanis, Farnese advised him to employ a silver candelabra rather than his sword. Recognizing Farnese's understanding of the situation, Roderick readily accepted her suggestion and changed his weapon accordingly. What truly distinguishes him as suitable for interactions with Guts and his companions is his remarkable attitude towards the extraordinary and the catastrophic. He displays little fear. Unlike many others, he is not deterred by Guts' unsettling appearance or manner, greeting him with a sense of camaraderie. This openness extends to his other companions as well. During the turmoil of the meeting chamber of Vertanis and the subsequent horrors at the harbour, he remains profoundly impressed, but maintains his composure, unlike Magnifico, expressing genuine admiration for the group's prowess in battle. Roderick possesses a notable skill in swordsmanship, having successfully slain several of the Kushan's tigers that disrupted the meeting in Vertanis, as well as a few Daka, all on his own. However, it is at sea that Roderick truly excels. He is an exceptional naval commander, easily defeating the inept crew of Bonebeard, despite facing the challenge of 3 ships simultaneously, and managing to fend off the Sea Guard during its assault on his vessel. He achieved the remarkable feat of sinking 3 Tudor ships with just 1 ship, which earned him the title of Sailing Prince of Wise. In addition to his naval prowess, Roderick is also an outstanding swimmer and possesses surprising strength. He has the capability to dive down and rescue Guts, who likely weighs significantly more than he does, bringing him to the surface to save him from drowning. Now let's go over some of the apostles this story has for us. The Snake Lord. The first apostle in the series. As a tyrannical ruler of Corca, the Snake Lord exhibited an air of both calmness and authority, coupled with an unapologetically sadistic disposition. He took immense pleasure and pride in instilling fear within the hearts of men, harbouring a profound disdain for humanity, which he viewed as mere prey for apostle kind, yearning for their demise amid a chaotic inferno. In the heat of battle, he portrayed himself as an omnipotent being, a belief bolstered by his status as an apostle. His confidence in his abilities often led him to underestimate his adversaries, as evidenced by the incident where Guts swiftly unseated him, sending his base form crashing through a building. Upon transforming into his true form, his confidence surged, and his contempt for humanity became even more pronounced. However, when Guts ultimately incapacitated and defeated him, the Snake Lord's demeanor shifted dramatically, transforming him into a pitiful beggar as he pleaded for his life, ultimately left to perish in the flames. The Slug Count. Approximately 7 years prior to the 5th eclipse, the individual who would eventually become the Count held dominion over a stronghold during a tumultuous period when his territory was besieged by pagans. Following an extensive campaign to hunt down these pagans, he returned to his castle, was willingly engaging in dirty business with heretics. Enveloped in the blind fury, he slaughtered all the participants in this heretical gathering until only his wife remained, whom he found himself unable to kill. Overcome with despair upon witnessing his wife's knowing and triumphant smile, he nearly took his own life before his Behelit responded to his anguish. Granted an audience with the Godhand, he made the harrowing decision to sacrifice his wife in a bid to transcend his humanity and alleviate his suffering. Reborn as an apostle, he ultimately consumed his branded wife. Shortly after his reincarnation, the Count began to propagate a falsehood, claiming that his wife had been taken hostage by a faction of heretics and subsequently killed during a sacrificial ceremony. He then placed his daughter, Teresia, under house arrest. Following this, the Count pursued heretics with an unnatural fervour. These inquisitions were merely a facade, allowing him to amass more victims, whom he vivisected, further mutilated, and ultimately consumed. When his physician Vargas uncovered this dark secret and attempted to flee, the Count captured him, disfigured him, and forced him to witness a horrific spectacle of his wife and 2 sons being devoured alive. Despite this, Vargas eventually managed to escape with the Count's Behelit. As an apostle, the Count was an exceptionally cruel individual, executing alleged heretics and their families for perceived transgressions, and taking those who were not immediately killed to be consumed following his experiments. Additionally, he was a gluttonous apostle. Unable to satisfy his hunger prior to the eclipse, he, along with other apostles including Rosine, indulged in a feast upon a camp of injured mercenaries from the Band of the Hawk. Years later, the Count relished the opportunity to taunt Guts while overpowering the swordsmen during their confrontation. However, he descended into a state of panic and hysteria when it became evident that Guts had emerged victorious. There is limited information regarding his experiences as a human being. Vargas noted that while the Baron exhibited cruelty, he did not possess sadistic tendencies. Teresia further remarked that despite her father's harshness, he held genuine affection for his kingdom. He was particularly prone to uncontrollable rage. After sustaining mortal injuries inflicted by Guts, he spared Teresia from becoming a sacrifice to the Godhand, fully aware that by refraining from her sacrifice, he would be condemned to the abyss for all eternity. Wild. Very little is known about Wild's life prior to his ascension as an apostle, apart from the fact that he was a small, frail, elderly man. At some point after becoming an apostle, he found himself imprisoned. This period of incarceration ultimately led to his encounter with the King of Midland, 5 years before Griffith's escape. The king ordered the assembly of all able-bodied criminals to be conscripted into military service. Wild stepped forward to volunteer as the leader of this newly formed army, asserting that he was the strongest and that the position of the leadership was rightfully his. A formidable man known as Barbo approached to contest Wild's claim, resulting in a fierce battle to the death for the right to lead. In a bid to instill fear and garner respect among other convicts, Wild killed Barbo in a dramatic manner, impaling him upon the spike of a tower. Wild and his band of convicts, known as the Black Dog Knights, earned a notorious reputation for their brutality, as their proclivity for committing heinous acts prompted the king to dispatch them to distant battlefields, far from his gaze. Wild is depicted as an individual who understands the necessity of transcending the ordinary to ensure his troops' obedience, whether through power, charisma, or fear. He embodies the qualities of a libertine, consistently adhering to his motto of excitement and enjoyment. His enthusiasm for battle is paired with an almost gleeful anticipation. Guts himself remarks on Wild's recklessness, noting that his combat technique is rather haphazard and that he often relies on instinct alone. He frequently places his men in perilous situations purely for the sake of amusement, carelessly leading them into traps set by the Band of the Hawk, even going so far as to kill a soldier who protests against such tactics. When his troops lose their morale, he does not hesitate to massacre them. He exhibits a complete absence of morality or empathy, deriving sadistic pleasure from his actions. He engages in heinous acts, including rape and mutilation of women, the burning of children alive, and the killing of his own soldiers primarily for sport. Additionally, he humiliates Casca and Griffith by stripping them naked in front of their own men. In dire circumstances, Weil sheds his typical cocky and playful demeanour, resorting to desperation as he takes Griffith hostage in a bid to summon the Godhand for his restoration. Subsequently, he tries to rationalise his actions to Nosferatu Zodd, who swiftly ends his life. Weil possesses an extraordinary level of strength, demonstrated by his ability to crush a man's skull using only 2 fingers, shatter a falling boulder with a punch, hold Guts' sword using his teeth and a single hand, and tear a tree apart with his bare hands. In addition to his remarkable strength, he exhibits superhuman reflexes and speed, enabling him to easily parry or block all of Guts' attacks with nothing more than a simple log. Furthermore, Weil successfully captures Casca, who is renowned for her agility as a fighter. He adeptly employs psychological intimidation and charisma, allowing him to instill fear in his hardened criminal soldiers and compel their obedience. Although he lacks skill in combat, his apostle abilities compensate for this deficiency, allowing him to overwhelm more experienced and skilled adversaries. While already immensely powerful and agile in his human form, his apostle transformation significantly enhances his fundamental capabilities, enabling him to dispatch numerous armed men using a tree trunk. His attacks are also sufficiently forceful to break Guts' large sword. Rosine. Originally from a village, Rosine was born after her mother and several other women in their community were assaulted by enemy combatants during a significant conflict. Consequently, her father began to question whether Rosine was indeed his biological daughter. This doubt led to frequent arguments between her parents, prompting Rosine to withdraw from them entirely. She spent her days in woods and streams, catching insects and small animals, while collecting various items she stumbled upon, including a particular stone she discovered on the riverbank. During this time, she formed a friendship with a young girl named Jill, sharing her own rendition of the tale of Picaf, and fancied herself as an elf, despite being aware of their fictional nature. One evening, in order to maintain the pretense of being an elf, Rosine resolved to run away to the mythical elvish land believed to be situated in the Misty Valley. Prior to her departure, she informed Jill that she could have everything she had gathered over the year, with the exception of one item, the strange stone she intended to take with her. Upon joyfully arriving in the Misty Valley, she sat alone, fully cognizant of the fact that elves were merely a figment of imagination. Yet she upheld the illusion to rationalize her departure from the village. Days later, after her parents had organized such parties to locate her, Rosine was found by them. Her mother expressed relief at her return, while her father reacted with aggression, striking Rosine and chastising her for leaving. He voiced his humiliation at the villagers' concern over her disappearance and questioned whether she had fled because he was not her true father. Although her mother attempted to intervene, she too was met with violence, akin to that inflicted upon Rosine. Disturbed by the scene, which she deemed inappropriate for the valley, Rosine's Behelit activated, leading her to sacrifice her own parents in order to be reborn as an elf-like apostle. From that point forward, Rosine began abducting children, transforming them into her elves, while also converting lost men from the surrounding forest into guardians for her realm. It was during this period that her elf-like pseudo-apostles commenced attacks on her home village, as well as on neighbouring settlements. During her time as a human, she was rather tomboyish and adventurous, spending long hours playing in the woods and enjoying herself and catching small animals. Jill suggested that Rosine's desire to become an elf stemmed from her identification with and admiration for the tale of a child named Picaf, who fled from his village due to his resemblance to an elf and his uncertainty regarding his true parentage. Jill recalls how serious and impressed Rosine appeared when she revealed that she too was an elf, noting that Rosine seemed to be forcing herself to adopt a cheerful demeanour. Following her transformation into an apostle, Rosine began to refer to herself as the Queen of the Elves, and her true form was that of a large female lunar moth. Her elf-like pseudo-apostles would consume livestock and people, as well as abducting children, whom she then transformed into additional elves through the use of cocoons. These actions were motivated by a moral framework that she adopted in response to the cruelty she experienced while living in her village. Throughout her upbringing, she was subjected to regular beatings, and enjoyable experiences were always found beyond the confines of the village, a place beset by hunger, cold, and conflict. Consequently, Rosine believed that she was demonstrating kindness towards the children. This is exemplified by her desire to transform Jill into a pseudo-apostle, thereby ensuring that no one could inflict harm upon her. She exhibits a possessive nature towards Jill, frequently embracing the girl and asserting that she belongs to her. However, it is evident that Rosine generally cares for Jill and holds affection for her as a friend, striving to protect her from danger. Additionally, she is also depicted as flirting with Guts during their battles. Rosine also has a selection of abilities. Poison Dust. She is capable of producing a toxic substance from the dust of her wings. Pseudo-Apostle Siring. She possesses polymorphic abilities that allow her to transform the children she captures into insect-like minions, which she refers to as elves. This transformation is achieved by puppeting them with cocoons located in the merchant's grounds. Enhanced Speed. In her true apostle form, Rosine can attain supersonic speeds while in flight. This remarkable speed significantly enhances her lethality and keeps her out of harm's way. However, it comes at the cost of her accuracy. When she breaks the sound barrier, she generates sonic booms powerful enough to destabilize her targets, even if she fails to land a direct hit. Enhanced Proboscis. Alongside her incredible speed, she exhibits the capability to utilize her moth-like proboscis as a lance for impaling foes, or as a makeshift rapier for slashing and disemboweling. During her initial encounter with Guts, she adeptly deflects his thrown knives using only her proboscis. Egg of the Perfect World. Before ascending to become the Egg of the Perfect World, the individual who was an inconspicuous nobody resided in Albion. His earliest recollection was of the refuse heap at the foot of the Tower of Conviction. While scavenging for food, he stumbled upon a Behelit amidst the debris. It was only when he felt an inexplicable urge that he ventured to observe the humans above. Regarded as a monster, his presence incited fear, prompting people to hurl stones at him. Consequently, he fled back down and excavated a hole. By night, he rummaged through the refuse, while during the day he remained motionless. As time passed, the hole deepened. Unbeknownst to him, the individuals who began to settle in the vicinity turned his refuge into a site for disposing of their deceased. Eventually, an accumulation of bodies rested atop nobody, threatening to suffocate him beneath their weight. As he began to fade from consciousness, his Behelit activated, summoning the 5 angels before him. They revealed the world to him, and as he grappled with his own negative emotions, along with the despair of the world around him, he wept. In that moment, the angels proposed to fulfill his wish in exchange for the world that enveloped him. As a human, he found himself ostracized, residing in a dump and concealing himself within an underground tunnel. Consequently, he exhibited kindness and compassion towards the malformed and downtrodden, bestowing peace upon the demon child by consuming it, thus allowing the child to dream within the sanctuary of the new world that resided within him. The apostle possessed an awareness of causality and actively contributed to its progression. Viewing his own existence as something that ought never to have been, he willingly exchanged it for the prospect of a better world, not for his own benefit. Despite reflecting on the possibility that he might have become somebody had he encountered Mozgus and been treated like his tormentors, he ultimately concluded that his existence was intended to be one of contempt. It too possesses certain abilities. Pseudo-apostle creation. His tentacles were equipped with needles that enabled him to create pseudo-apostles, thereby bestowing upon them the power they sought to subtly influence causality. Agile maneuverability. The Egg of the Perfect World possessed the ability to leap and traverse walls, ceilings, and the ground effortlessly. This remarkable agility was facilitated by his tentacle-like arms and flexible legs, which allowed him to evade encounters with the Skull Knight. Ganishka. Ganishka was born the eldest son of a Kushan king. His mother favoured his younger brother and attempted to poison a 6-year-old Ganishka to ensure his brother's ascendance to the throne. Surviving the attempt on his life, Ganishka exacted revenge by killing his brother, whose death drove his grief-ridden mother to self-delete some time after. Though many in the Kushan royalty and aristocracy plotted against him, Ganishka managed to survive the den of vipers as he grew into an adult. Upon meeting his father as a young man, he noticed primarily the intense fear and suspicion in the king's eyes. In response, the young prince arranged the king's death and took the throne for himself. After becoming king, Ganishka came to believe that the best way to solidify his sovereignty was through fear and conquest. His campaigns left him no time to spend with his wife and child, the idea of which he came to fear anyhow. As a young monarch, Ganishka dedicated himself to mastering the art of warfare, achieving unparalleled prowess on the battlefield, driven by an insatiable ambition to dominate. Several years later, upon his return to the royal palace for a banquet, Ganishka found himself the victim of a poisoning and a near assassination orchestrated by royal guards at the instigation of his apprehensive son. In a desperate bid for survival, Ganishka activated a Behelit that had been bestowed upon him by a mysterious stranger some time prior, sacrificing his son in exchange for the opportunity to be reborn as an apostle. Surviving the ploys of the ever-scheming Kushan royalty and aristocracy throughout his youth hardened Ganishka into a callous, calculated prince, one who brought about the deaths of his younger brother, mother and father. In order to survive and thrive as a young monarch, Ganishka devoted himself to the art of war, and became convinced that inspiring fear was the only way to progress. All the while harbouring many unshakable fears of his own, he became increasingly obsessed with reigning supreme over the entire world, all in a vain attempt to quell his own fears. Upon his encounter with Guts, Ganishka was struck by the swordsman's remarkable skill, indomitable spirit, and his capacity to endure as one marked by a brand. He found Guts to be quite agreeable, and regarded the swordsman's inherent malevolence and madness as fitting for the blood-soaked realm of humanity. Distinct from other apostles, Ganishka steadfastly refused to submit to the Godhand, convinced that he alone was worthy of ruling the world. Consequently, he harboured a deep-seated animosity towards Griffith, particularly when the White Hawk began to obstruct his invasion of Midland. During the Kushan assault on Vertanis, when he finally confronted Griffith directly, he was incapacitated by the White Hawk and compelled to retreat. Following this encounter, he recognised the vast disparity between his power and that of Griffith, which left him feeling disturbed, fatigued, and profoundly humiliated. The weight of this humiliation was so severe that the Emperor chose to descend into the man-made Behelit to be reincarnated, in a bid to surpass the Godhand. In his second reincarnation, Ganishka lost his ability for rational thought and a sense of identity, perceiving those around him as mere insects. Initially, he could recognize Deba, but over time, he became increasingly disorientated, overwhelmed by his own immense power. As he trampled his army beneath his feet, he expressed delight, comparing the resulting carnage to blooming red flowers. Yet within the troubled depths of his mind, Ganishka contemplated his lifelong, shadowy existence, feeling a profound sadness as he acknowledged the apparent absence of light in life. Mozgus, a fervent adherent of God, is an exceptionally devout individual whose faith borders on fanaticism. He places immense importance on his religion in all aspects of his life. He journeys alongside his torturers, for whom he harbours deep affection. Upon discovering their deaths, Mozgus experiences profound anguish. He harbours a profound disdain for what he terms heretics. He has subjected hundreds of individuals to brutal and intense interrogation methods, seeking to extract confessions. In his eyes, even a single mole could serve as a sign of witchcraft or heresy. This extreme viewpoint has rendered him the object of considerable animosity and resentment. Mozgus is particularly sensitive to anyone who professes to speak on behalf of God's will. He even executed a villager for merely suggesting that Mozgus would face divine retribution for his arbitrary actions. Although Mozgus is aware of his sadistic and bloodthirsty reputation, he understands the sorrow that accompanies the enforcement of God's stringent laws, as he inflicts suffering upon others. Nevertheless, he does not experience any remorse for his actions. In his perspective, the act of shedding blood is a pathway to living devotedly for God. This is particularly illustrated in his parable involving the holy woman and the dying man, where he imparts to Farnese the lesson that one cannot always discern what truly aids others. Mozgus shows a compassionate disposition towards the downtrodden, the ill, the impoverished, as well as those who are misshapen and deformed. He personally recruited his torturers during his travels, despite their ostracization from the wider society. He instilled in them the belief that God required individuals with their distinctive appearances and hearts filled with resentment stemming from their past experiences of rejection. And Mozgus possesses an utter lack of fear regarding death and displays remarkable bravery, particularly when he and his torturers find themselves trapped by the physical malevolence within the Tower of Conviction. Upon meeting his demise at the hand of Guts, he exhibits neither cowardice nor trepidation. Instead, he feels a profound sense of joy at the prospect of finally being united with God. He has a list of abilities and skills. Constitution. Mozgus, as indicated by his daily routine of prostration, possesses a remarkably high tolerance for pain. After enduring 10 years of such practices, he has sustained significant damage to his knees, rendering him barely able to walk and completely incapable of running. Upon his transformation into a pseudo-apostle, Mozgus, convinced that his newfound powers are a divine gift, exhibits the following characteristics and abilities. God's armor. In his more monstrous form, Mozgus develops a tough, scaly hide that envelops his entire body. This armor is impervious to all weapons, including Guts' formidable dragon slayer. Nevertheless, due to a prior injury sustained before his transformation, a small fissure has formed in the armor at that site. Guts manages to exploit this vulnerability, using an array of explosives to widen the crack in the armor. God Breath. Mozgus possesses the ability to exhale fire, capable of incinerating anything caught within its flames. Angelic Wings. Additionally, Mozgus acquires a pair of large, white angelic wings that enable him to fly. In his second transformation, he is able to utilize his wings as an additional set of arms, allowing him to execute a range of more devastating attacks. These include God's Thousand Strike Cannon. All of his feathers transform into fists, striking his enemies with rapid and overwhelming force. God's Pressure. He is able to crush his adversaries beneath the weight of his wings. Immense Strength. Even in his original form, Mozgus demonstrated considerable strength, having been able to eliminate one of his would-be assassins in a fit of rage using only his scripture tome. Following his transformation into a pseudo-apostle, his strength escalates to inhuman levels. Irvine. He is a reserved and introspective individual. Beyond his commendable prowess in battle, he exhibits little interest in matters concerning the Band of the Hawk. In his leisure time, Irvine takes pleasure in hunting wildlife and camping in the woods, where he indulges in his sole passion, playing the lute by the campfire. Despite being an apostle, Irvine reveals a surprisingly gentle side to his character. For example, on one occasion, when Sonia requested permission to warm herself by his campfire, he not only granted her request, but also engaged her in an amicable conversation and kindly covered her with his coat when she drifted off to sleep. In his human form, Irvine is capable of firing multiple arrows at once, with perfect accuracy at multiple targets at different distances from one another. These arrows are often fired with enough force to dismember humans. His transformed state is capable of similar feats, but on an even greater scale, against more monstrous opponents. Irvine possesses the remarkable ability to traverse a battlefield at astonishing velocities and ascend tall structures with remarkable ease. This capability is significantly enhanced when he assumed his apostle form. During the Battle of Vertanis, Irvine effortlessly outpaces the advancing Kushan forces. In his apostle form, Irvine is capable of forming his own arrows using hair from his tail. The hair condenses into sharp needles that, once shot, unravel violently after they reach a target's body, expanded into large thorny masses which tear it apart from the inside out. This allows a relatively small arrow to dismember even a large opponent. Additionally, Irvine utilizes the horn of his apostle form by tying a rope around them, fashioning a ballista-like weapon with which to shoot these arrows at a high velocity. He also has superhuman strength, of course. In his apostle form, Irvine is capable of using his horns to lift a felled tree easily, when 4 men had been unable to even budge it. Locus. Locus is a warrior celebrated as the Moonlight King, and considered to be a living legend. He is famed as the mightiest of knights, boasting an undefeated record in countless duels and contests, and known for never settling on any one master. It is said that sons of warriors grow up on bedtime stories of his heroism. Locus is a stoic individual who exhibits a focused and calculated demeanour, both in combat and his personal life. He embodies a rare combination of logic, wisdom, and self-discipline that distinguishes him among the apostles. Furthermore, he possesses a profound sense of honour and integrity, which drives him to condemn those who neglect their responsibilities as the designated protectors of Midland during the Kushan invasion of the kingdom. Prior to pledging his loyalty to Griffith, Locus had never submitted to any singular master. Since that pivotal moment, he has dedicated himself to Griffith, placing unwavering trust in his leader, both as a member of the Godhand and as a sovereign. Indeed, he firmly believes that his leader's actions are aimed at the betterment of the world. Above all, Locus is driven to fulfill Griffith's will and advance his dream, engaging in battle on Griffith's behalf against all who stand in opposition. When Locus transforms into his released form, his physique merges with that of his horse, resulting in a centaur-like appearance. This new form possesses a lustrous, silvery metallic sheen, adorned with numerous hooked protrusions. Furthermore, his shield integrates with his left arm, while his lance elongates and flattens, taking on a blade-like configuration. His weapon of choice is a large lance, which he is masterful at wielding in combat. In his normal form, he can generate enough force behind his lance to fell several enemies in a single strike. In his released form, his lance transforms into a thicker, sharper version of its original state, and his already masterful lancemanship becomes even more destructive and efficient. In line with his self-controlled nature, Locus leads those under his command with a calculated calm, unrivaled by his apostle cohorts. As a consequence of merging with his warhorse, Locus gains the speed and agility of his horse for himself, while remaining free to use both of his hands to combat enemies with his transformed lance. Rakshas. a member of the Bakiraka clan, Rakshas was exiled. Since that time, he has been regarded as a taboo within the clan. At one stage, he became an apostle. Rakshas is now currently a member of the Band of the Hawk, serving as an assassin. He has expressed that his motivation for forming an alliance with Griffith, whom he describes as lovely, is to protect him from danger until the moment he can sever his head. He asserts that this inclination is related to the way all apostles are captivated by Griffith. Rakshas exhibits an arrogant and condescending demeanour, ridiculing the Tapasa for their sluggish responses to his movements, and using this as evidence of the Bakiraka's impending downfall. However, he ultimately concedes that the Tapasa are indeed quite swift given their size. Rakshas is a hedonistic murderer who toys with his victims prior to their demise, a behaviour that Silat finds utterly detestable. Additionally, Silat characterizes him as remarkably persistent in his pursuit of a target. Rakshas possesses a profound attachment to his mask, becoming sufficiently despondent to withdraw from combat following its destruction by Silat. He also experiences sorrow when it is pierced during Ricket's initial volley during his nocturnal ambush at Valconia. He appears to be a rather reserved individual, preferring to communicate through strings of words and concise sentences as he observes his surroundings. He only takes the opportunity to articulate himself more fully when engaging directly with others. However, his manner of speaking tends to deteriorate as battle grows increasingly chaotic. Due to his apostolic body rendering him amorphous, Rakshas serves as an assassin under Griffith, specializing in stealth. He is observed effortlessly approaching and eliminating Kushan scouts who were attempting to assassinate Griffith, with Zodd failing to notice their presence. Additionally, he demonstrated his skill by shooting a dart into an elephant's ear while remaining within the view of its handler. He excels at remaining concealed until he chooses to reveal himself and possesses the ability to merge with the shadows. This skill allows him to witness Ganishka's defeat while positioned beneath Zodd's wings. Furthermore, Rakshas has the unique capability to move his head to any location on his body. Silat, seemingly triumphant in their initial confrontation by cleanly slicing through Rakshas's mask, only to discover that Rakshas's face and head were not behind it at that moment. His body possesses the ability to generate various blade-like appendages, which are utilized for gripping and slicing. Furthermore, it exhibits remarkable durability, as evidenced when a thrown stone struck him, yet he emerged from the debris completely unscathed. He has also demonstrated the capacity to endure an entire barrage of bolts fired by Ricket's repeating crossbow. In addition, he is notably agile and possesses considerable strength, enabling him to engage in combat on equal footing with formidable opponents such as Silat and the Tapasa. Moreover, Rakshas is capable of moving at surprising speeds, having traversed the distance from a statue to position himself directly behind Ricket in a matter of moments. In apostle form, Rakshas acquires the ability to fly. His tentacles exhibit enhanced dexterity and become significantly stronger, enabling him to smash through the roof of a house and lift a horse into the air with a single appendage. In this state, he can also transform his cloth into scythe-like tentacles, capable of slicing large animals in half or cutting through metal bars with remarkable ease. Rakshas appears to possess an adversarial relationship with anything that is bright or warm. When engulfed in flames, he lamented his desire to remain concealed from the light. Similarly, when Farnese safeguards the Kushan Palace with the four kings of the world, the assassin evades capture, expressing his discontent at having to operate in the glaring light, and seeks refuge in the shadows. Grunbeld. Grunbeld serves as the leader of the Band of the Hawk Giants. Prior to his association with the band, he gained notoriety during the 100-Year War, where he valiantly defended against Tudor's invasion with a mere personal force of 3,000 soldiers. His backstory is intricately detailed in the novel Berserk, The Flame Dragon Knight, which will not be presented here. A proud apostle, he is a serious individual who has little tolerance for jokes and frivolity. However, he has also demonstrated an admirable side. At the Mansion of the Spirit Tree, he questions the order he has received, asserting to Guts that it is dishonorable to attack an elderly woman with such a large force. Guts challenges his so-called ethics, arguing that monsters should not feign adherence to a warrior's code or notions of pride. Upon realizing Guts' formidable prowess during their battle, he begins to adopt more cunning tactics and ultimately transforms into his apostle form. Grunbeld then congratulates Guts on his victory in that encounter, declaring that from that moment onwards, he will fulfill his duties as an apostle with the intention of defeating him. As a giant apostle, Grunbeld possesses incredible strength, as displayed when he tore through the ranks of armoured Kushan soldiers with a single swing of his hammer. He is a quick fighter with great speed, and when he transforms into his apostle form, his strength increased dramatically. In his apostolic form, Grunbeld's skin undergoes a transformation into corundum, which is a crystalline variant of aluminium oxide, known for its exceptional durability and strength, surpassing that of steel. Despite sustaining damage during his confrontation with Guts, Grunbeld is not observed to have any scar when he reappears later. Also in his apostle form, he has the capability of spitting fire. In battle, he primarily uses his great hammer. The hammer has a flat surface for smashing opponents and breaking armor, as well as a large spike on the opposite end that can be used for grappling armor and shields, along with piercing through wooden and steel barricades. He also wields an imposing shield that possesses the strength to withstand cannonball fire. This formidable shield features the visage of a monstrous creature and is capable of launching cannonballs. Additionally, it conceals two blades that can be swiftly drawn and employed during combat. And that is the end of this video. I hope it served your purpose, and thank you for listening. Goodbye now.